FOMO, Wells only and his guests are not responsible for any losses you may accrue for having weak hands. Where the haters at? Y'all bitches still ain't showed up. And now, right, we got HEX, flawless uptime. People thought this was a joke. Now they're mad at the chart. This is Wales only. Glad you guys can make it out. I'm making some claims that are pretty outlandish, but I can back them up. Boom. End of story. There is no other crypto out there, so don't get it twisted. If you don't understand where you're parking your money, you're gonna pay the consequences for that, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. Boom. Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. Yep. That's it. Yep. That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. Shit, motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. Man, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Y'all's deep. Everybody. My God. Ex-Asians, bro. Everybody. Australians, man. Everybody gets me. Yo, when is it told you? Dollar told you. Everybody done told you. It's crazy. Happy Sunday to Hexaco. Have and I would say an infamous but famous guest within the community, Mr. Jack Levin, also known as Mr. Google number 21, right? And I think this is kind of what makes him uniquely interesting to me, because when you're at the bottom floor of something like Google, it doesn't look like what it is now at all, ever, right? And we're kind of going to dive into that topic a little bit, because that's exactly what Hex is like right now. What crypto is like in general right now. In fact, I'd say maybe even earlier than that, because the concept itself is so foreign, right, to the common person, that it's like you're talking Chinese. We're talking about Hex. That's like talking. Now we're trying to decipher between Mandarin and Cantonese, right? The average person doesn't even know Chinese. So that's kind of where we're at in the crypto sphere, right? And this is after 13 years approximately of his existence at this point. So it's interesting to see something so prescient in terms of time take place after something that so eloquently altered the world as Google, right? And then to have somebody that was there to see it when it was really just a day-by-day operation. I think that that's the kind of perspective that people need to hear to understand the bigger picture, right? Because the bigger picture is always foggy when you're walking through the forest, right? You can't see the forest when you're walking through the forest. And that's kind of what's so important about having these kinds of conversations, having people involved. So today people found out there's even a person that worked at Bell Labs that's a Hex, right? And it's all of these unique attributes that create the cloth, right, that you see when you look at Hexaco, right? This mosaic, all these different characters. It's what makes it so unique, right? And I'd like to welcome you to the channel. And at the same time, I'd like to welcome all the subs that are currently watching right now. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys always fail to impress. False. You guys are the best. Stop playing. Hold on. It's New York City. Excuse me. So how you doing today, Jack? How you feeling on this great Sunday, man? Thank you for coming on, taking the time to speak with me, speak with us, and give us your perspective, because I think it's important for everybody to kind of share their point of view, especially when they're new. Because when they're new, and I mean new in the sense that they're talking to everybody else. Because when you talk to others, you kind of see a lot of the serendipitous occurrences, right, which are unique also to something that just doesn't happen often, right? And all these factors just paint this out of this world image in my head. Cause I don't know how you found Hex. Oh no, I do. I'm lying. I watched that first stream with Crypto Coffee, and I mean, just imagine. I don't know if that's how you initially found out about it, but imagine you're just moseying around, just doing nothing, and all of a sudden you find out about this thing that literally alters time, space, and nobody understands that. Now, that might sound like a drastic statement, but when you think about how humans place value on things, you know, this could really alter the landscape of just money in general if people figure this out, right? Because here we are with the ability to kind of mint our own rewards, right? Which is never that possibility has never ever existed before, and there is no intermediary to kind of say, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that, right? So it's all these things, man, that just brings us all to this point in time. I'm just some regular Joe Schmo, right? I'm honored to be talking to you, even though you consider yourself a regular person just like anybody else. But the amount of respect I have to for a person to be able to just say yes to doing something like that, even though it was just something you wanted to do, right? Please walk me through the process of you saying, "Yeah, let me go work at this place," which was Google back then. How do you even walk into that door, right?
Yeah. Hey, Wales. Thanks for inviting me. Super happy to be here. Very glad to meet you, and thanks for hosting me. So, I would say, a different person in 1999, like the most of us, I guess, right? So it's been a long time, and I was living in the Silicon Valley and wanted to make it, wanted to make it big, and um, one of the goals was to hang out with smart people and learn from smart people out there. And the place to be was Stanford. And I didn't go to Stanford, but my wife and I, we were in a rollerblading club in Stanford, and every Wednesday we would just rollerblade with a bunch of Stanford students, and just being there every week, and then sometimes on weekends, exposed us to the environment that
Wow.
basically allowed us to see that there would be a job fair on Stanford campus right there at the Circle, and that's where the interesting companies will be recruiting, trying to get engineers to work on their projects, right?
Right.
And so I went there to see what that was, and there was maybe 20 companies, just very very early startups, not many people working there, and I talked to most of them, and I met Sergey Brin of Google right there, uh, basically soliciting, or he wasn't giving job offers, but he was definitely introducing the company, Google. And it was Google with a bang, because Google wanted to be similar to Yahoo, and Yahoo had the bang, the exclamation point at the end.
Right, right.
So back in the day, Google logo actually had the bang, and when I saw the logo, it kind of a little turned me off, because I'm like, hey, those guys are, they're just trying to. I mean, they're paying attention to the logo idiosyncrasies of what Yahoo is doing, and Yahoo was like hot stuff.
Right.
So I thought, maybe there's nothing to it. And why would we need another search engine? There's like 7 search engines out there, so they all
Right.
work. And so it wasn't at all impressive to me that uh, that there was another search engine. So I still decided to give him my resume because hey, I had copies, and I took his card and I went home. And the name, such a stupid name too, like Google, right? Like who would come up with it? It's kind of
Yeah,
like
that's the
something
first
was
thing I
like,
thought of when I heard the company name. It's like, really?
yeah, I mean, it's first of all, it sounds silly and stupid,
Mhm.
and but then like I kind of read into it, and it didn't help that actually Google is the very large number. It's like you know millions or
Yeah,
one
yeah, yeah,
billion
yeah. Like
millions,
a million
whatever. There's a very
squared or
large
whatever.
number,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like a
and I
million
thought,
squared or
well,
something stupid like that. I
yeah,
can't
I thought,
remember.
well, I mean, it is the world of stupid names. I mean, doesn't matter.
Yes,
I mean,
at that time
I
it
mean,
was. Yes,
Yahoo was pretty stupid too. So
yes, yes.
I mean, Excite was a thing. Was a little bit more to the point. I mean, you're kind of excited to be at Excite. Alta Vista
Right,
was kind of more interesting too. So, but hey, I mean, I didn't discriminate on names, and I just wanted to look at the product. So I went home and I typed in google.com, start searching, and it worked. And it worked amazingly well. It worked better than anything that I have ever seen. And so I thought, if this is an early company with like 15 people at the startup and they can produce something that works so well, then I definitely should go work for them. Because I mean, what do I get to lose? I'm 24 years old or 23. I mean, so I'll go and work for them and see what happens. I mean, it could be hell of a ride, could be fun, could be boring, but I just wouldn't know if I don't try. So
right,
I called them up and they said, yeah, we're still hiring, obviously. Come on down for an interview. I came for an interview, and Larry Page and Sergey, they both interviewed me. And I think what really helped me to get the job was that I was in open source really early. I was using Linux for a long, long time. Well, long time was,
mm,
I would say, 5 years,
right,
basically when it first came out. And so
right,
I knew the ins and outs of the operating system, and they loved free stuff. Like they loved open source. They were like, I would say, libertarian at heart, and they believed in innovation. Innovation could be better if more people participate. And so that's why they used and chose Linux for the operating system to run Google. And
right,
I felt right at home. So they gave me an offer right away. I accepted, and the next week I started. And I didn't know at the time that it would be anything big or interesting, you know, in a couple of years. I mean, for the first 2 years, we actually did not know we're gonna make it.
right.
So
Usually how it goes.
because Google was a search engine and search engines were not monetizable. What was monetizable is literally you pay a couple of cents for 1,000 searches that you sell to other portals. Like we thought that we're gonna sell the search to Alta Vista, well, not Alta Vista, but like more like Excited Home would be using Google, and AOL would be using Google, and Yahoo would
Right,
be
like
using
like
Google.
a aggregator or whatever type
Yeah,
of
yeah,
site.
yeah. What would be like in addition to their suite of informational services, and will help their people to
Right,
find information on internet better. But what we didn't realize is that people actually liked search more than their silly portals with full of nonsense. I
yeah.
mean, Yahoo Finance is pretty good, right? But the rest of it, like an entertainment section, eh.
Yeah, no, that never really mattered. I remember when Google tried to do that. It was like where you had the homepage with all these different sections too. I don't know if you remember that. This was a long time ago, maybe like pre 2010.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
had
yeah, yeah.
that same similar type of setup where you can have different sections pulling up different
Yeah, I think it
information.
was called like Google Zeitgeist or something like that.
I
I
can't
forget.
remember the name, but it's one of those things, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. And so the search engine queries were ramping up every day. So every day there were millions and millions of searches coming through. And within 2 years, we figured out if we syndicate and build an ad system on top of it, and give access to the ad system to basically people with credit cards. And the story was that the search advertising or advertising through search was a novel concept, and we
Right.
wanted to do something
Was
different and new. So where Yahoo and AltaVista and Excite, they were showing banner ads, we wanted to show the
right.
link ads or link-based ads,
Right.
which was novel and interesting and new. And what we discovered that a lot of people wanted to manipulate the search results so that they would end up to be higher on the
Right.
search rank. And we thought that if we were to give people the chance to show legit results and just have them pay for it, then everybody wins. Because people who search for things, they will end up finding things that they like.
Right.
Potentially, if the anti-spam system works well, then it wouldn't be anything bad, and it would just make more information available, and people will end up paying for it. And that was the AdWords. So AdWords was very successful product, still is. I would
Yeah.
say 80% of Google's revenue, and I could be wrong, but for a long time, for years, 80% of Google's revenue was coming through search ads, and that's what made Google just enormously
Huge.
popular and huge,
Yeah.
and allow them to buy YouTube and you
Correct.
know.
It really filled up their coffers, right? Because that
Yeah,
search function is exactly what people were waiting for in order to be able. That's what made the internet usable,
exactly.
right? That's why Google was able to take that idea of using AdWords and make it work because the search function was the ticket, right? How
Yeah,
else would have that worked? I mean, if you didn't have those unique queries, I don't think it would have. You wouldn't have had no way to measure anything and be able to, create that funnel for payments and that stickiness, right? Because people are attracted to value, and that's kind of the funny thing about the internet. Also, at the same time,
yeah, and I think it was great for the website developers as well. So for the first time, you could develop a website and actually generate
revenue,
targeted traffic
right?
to your website, and at the same time monetize it through AdSense, which was
Hmm.
another, I would say, ingenious Google product
Yeah,
that help you to get the revenue for by presenting useful information uh,
right. There are people
to
that
the.
basically live off of blogging, right? If their following is big enough.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So that ecosystem was very well done, and it was a very, I would say, welcome step away from banner ads and portals,
Yeah,
kind of like centralized information, right?
right,
Centralized information controlled by large media companies like Yahoo and AOL and Time Warner and wherever else, right?
right.
So, and that's kind of, I would say, very similar to the value that blockchain brings to the world too, right? So,
Yes, sir. This is exactly why it's important, right? For me anyway, to highlight these early points in Google's history that you're so well familiarized with because people need to understand that these things don't happen overnight, but they do happen, right? And that's the hardest thing for people to, especially in Hex, because we're like Hex is something that I would call a real crypto. And the reason I would call it that is because it meets the basic definition where it's not able to be manipulated by middlemen. Now, when you look at the rest of the space, you can't say that for Ethereum. You can't say that for Bitcoin. You have people in the mix all over. So the landscape has changed altogether, right? And it makes it difficult for people to accept that, but they have to because it's true. This is exactly why people like Richard Hard or anybody that's professing to promote real cryptocurrency gets blocked or gate kept because no middlemen, all of the ones that are failing currently at this point in time, can't eat, right? But even though they fail repeatedly, because we already saw this happen before in crypto, you still see them come back to the plate or come back to the table with a plate because they're allowed to come back. I mean, this is why we had more than just one BitConnect this time around. We had like six, and they're still popping up, right? Because the more uneducated the masses stay, the better off they play, right? And this is what we see repeatedly, time and time again. So it's important that we get the right education out there, but it's difficult to do that. And this is why these things take time. And Google was doing something so unique at the time that it took off almost instantly, right? Like once you guys got that search and those AdWords mixed together, that thing, it was just a matter of when people figured out what was going on and they just latched onto it because it's so strong that it still has a hold on the market. People use Google for damn near everything related to internet search, right? Like people cater their websites, their backlinks, and all these things to Google AdWords, to keywords from Google AdWords. It's not really from even like they even cater their content to it, right? Like they're really trying to stroke that algorithm. And this is all a function of the stickiness of Google's product and how unique it was just with the twist that it came with, right? But here we are, you know, 20 years removed from that point in time. That was something that altered the way we interacted with information, right? Now we're at a point in time where that nexus of technology has been so well crafted up to this point, right? That we can now move on to essentially digitizing value, right? Because that's where we're at now. Right now, we're digitizing value and we're trying to get people to understand that you're getting abused, used and abused, and you don't realize it because these ones and zeros in your bank account aren't really ones and zeros, they're less than, right? And this is difficult for people to wrap their head around because everything they see is denominated in that thing that isn't worth anything. So it's like it's worth something, even though it's not. So it's the greatest trick the devil ever played, kind of thing, right? It's almost like, yeah, the dollar is it's everywhere. You kind of need that thing, but but if you're using that, you got to understand that there's a cost to using that, and that is what the average person does not understand, because that's where inflation comes into play. Inflation eats at everybody's bag. Nobody's immune to that one. But this is why the investing game is so prominent, right? And our, I don't know, way of living as humans. I don't know how to explain it, but it's something that has always been a factor. And thanks for the super chat, far out. It's something that's always been a factor, right? In the way we do things. I mean, even look at what happened to the internet. Just like Google started out being all about freedom of information and all of that, it no longer is, right? But that's the whole internet. And that's if you just don't know, right? Because if you use the internet blindly, you're going to think that the information that's being provided to you is information that you are seeking, right? But in a lot of cases, this information is catered now, right? It's not 2005, 6, 7, 8, right? Things have changed. And people got to understand we're at a point in time now where money is changing. And just like information, the way information travels changed, the way money travels is going to change, right? So how do you think, since you've seen that information space change, right? How do you see, because you already been around from crypto's early days, how do you see Hex changing the game as far as the digitizing of value goes? Because everybody loves Bitcoin as a store of value, but it's really not a store of value. You don't get anything from just holding Bitcoin. It's literally a speculative asset. And they've even made it more so now because now you have all these institutions embedded in the game, and strictly the Bitcoin and Ethereum game. So it's not like it was before, right? And for people that are watching out there, they've heard me describe this very issue, and this is exactly why we had this prolonged cycle where we saw this long distribution happen at the top that lasted like over a year, where Bitcoin traded between $30,000 and $60,000. Right? How does that happen? That's never happened before, right? Typically, tops just happened and came and went. But this one took a long time, and I called it because once you realize the market is co-opted, they already tell you what they're going to do. You already see it in the volume. You can see it in all these different places, right? And that's kind of what's unique about this point in time, because now here we have this thing called Hex that is not what they want, because it's not Bitcoin or Ethereum, and they make it well known because they really try to block it from being known. And when it does reach some type of platform where it is a viable platform, like say when he was on Fox, when Richard was talking on Fox, um, what did you see? You saw them bring up that whole uh, scam thing, right? And that, did we lose you? I think we lost Jack. Let's see. Yeah, looks like we did. But for when he comes back, I'm sure you guys get the point. Um, how does Hex change the game, right? Nah, I think his internet messed up. Yeah, he's back now.
I didn't do anything. I was just sitting quietly.
Oh man, you know how that goes. Internet connections out in
Yeah.
California probably are a little shaky sometimes, especially if
I
you live
think
somewhere nice.
everyone in the neighborhood they turned on Netflix. Everybody got it's almost 6 p.m. So I think it's time
Is that what it is?
to watch Vampire Diaries or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Is that uh well, it's funny because this is part and parcel kind of what we're talking about, right? Before, you didn't have these kind of issues when you were watching anything. Like, the internet was just doing what the internet did. You didn't have every single person using the internet. Even grandma and grandpa using the internet now. That wasn't the case before, right? And these are these are the kinds of things I think about when I think about crypto. Is like, we've gone to the point in time where everybody is using the internet for something. I mean, my mother uses the internet every day, period. And she's almost 30 years older than me. She's almost 70. She uses the internet every day. So we're at a point where anybody can use this thing now. So the question I was trying to ask you earlier is, how do you think Hex changes the inflection? How does Hex give crypto an inflection point, if at all? Because I view Hex as something that really allows people to interact monetarily as crypto was intended for them to do so, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, I think it's too early to tell to see what Hex may do for crypto in general as the value is defined. What I do find very promising is that it is over 90% transparent on nomics, and I
Yes,
wish it would. Well, I wish it would stay that way because other cryptos that we see are not at all transparent. I think a lot of the volume that we see on Coin Market Cap, it's fake volume,
that's right.
and it's it's off chain, and we don't know what kind of game the decentralized exchanges are playing. But they're not playing the crypto game. They're playing the um,
Fake
take your
Wall Street
money
game.
and yeah, take your money and make money for themselves type of game, right? It's
Right.
not what blockchain was designed to do. And
Not at all.
so what we see out there is basically manipulation of perception when it comes
Yes.
to true value exchange across blockchain. So we would think that Bitcoin at 60,000 or 69,000 is a real thing. I don't think it's real. I think uh, it was a 6 months pump that the money and the sort of like the momentum that it had. I don't think it was actually the on-chain type of truth that
Right.
currently Hex represents. So
Right.
that's what I find very refreshing, and that's one thing. The other thing is that I find that a lot of crypto communities out there are technocratic nerds, and I'm not saying
Yes.
that they're not real people, right?
No.
But I see a lot of regular, normal people participating in the Hex community, and that's what makes it different.
Right. It does
So
make it different. Very different.
I would say there's three categories in the type of crypto and coins and blockchains out there. There's the Bitcoin, obviously, it was the original, and it's very, very thinly spread across institutional money, and other people are trying to buy it. And there's miners participating to a large degree. There's the credit market being involved because miners are buying the mining equipment by borrowing from banks. So there's a lot of interest rates are at play. Then
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
then there is Ethereum. So Ethereum is very interesting because it gave the rise to the programmable money and programmable Web3 that allowed people to come up with interesting innovations that can encode value into their tokens and do interesting
Right.
things based on user interaction. Uh, and then there is the meme coins, right? So the meme coins, they're kind of their own category, and I would say meme coins are even closer to what blockchain and crypto was designed to be because they attract so many people out there that are just regular people, like not the technocratic nerds that I'm talking about, right? It's just
Right.
people who
Right.
want to
Right.
play with crypto.
Yeah.
And that's what amazing about that category too, because they're like, hey, we have no cap, we have no value, all we have is a community, and
Literally.
and the community itself has value, and that what gives the meme coins value in itself. Now, a hex is, I would say, a hybrid between the value of the community and the built-in e-commerce
Built-in
functionality when it
utility.
comes. Yeah,
Yeah.
utility and functionality when it comes to staking and minting your hacks in the future. So that is interesting and different, and I think it may even deserve its own category. But it's definitely somewhere between the programmable money because it's definitely programmable. You're participating in in a smart contract that does something for you, and at the
Right.
same time it attracts the regular people out there that totally get why it may have value
Right.
rather than, for example, I mean, you I spoke with some Cardano people, and they're all doing something interesting, but you ask them a question like what Cardano is all about, and you have to be like a freaking PhD to understand even what they're talking about, right? I mean, from what I gather, Cardano will become faster as a blockchain the more people use it. I think it's cool.
Right.
I think the genesis of Cardano was to stick it to Ethereum and to make a better Ethereum. And so is Polkadot. So Polkadot is like connecting blockchains together, but it's so far out from the value that people really need that they can experience. All it is just like some sort of a giant technocratic project that a lot of people do not understand. And Cardano, for example, again, it doesn't really have the features of Ethereum just yet, and
Right.
there aren't that many people are using it. They're just in the process of making it into something, and it seems like they're just continuously building stuff that nobody really understands. I mean, it
Right.
takes a while to figure it out. So and those are just the two, right? I
Right.
mean, and there's like another hundreds that are leading
Yes.
people into this sort of like, hey, this is gonna be better for the planet because, and then it's gibberish because you just don't get it.
Right.
So So I mean, at least with the meme coin, you understand you're participating in a community and you love dogs, right? It's the
Yeah, it's
dog coin.
straightforward.
So
Yeah, it's
you love
straightforward.
dogs, and they may charge you a little bit and have a foundation that donates and rescues dogs. And if you love dogs, you use it. And if you just like don't take things seriously, then you're participating in it.
Yeah,
Hex is
even
more of
though.
a financial system, right? So it's a
Yeah,
financial system that's based on what I would call first principles of crypto, and I have tweeted about that before. First principles of crypto was essentially what Bitcoin was designed to be, which is self custody, transparency, counterparty resistance, um, cross border communications, completely open source,
right,
um, and Hex being an immutable smart contract on the chain without the admin keys, and nobody has an ability to turn it off or change it in any way, is very similar to what the blockchain initially was meant to be for the value of anything. So
right,
that's why I find it so interesting.
right. Yeah, and that's kind of one of those things that we always try to promote and preach. I mean, hell, um, even when I'm streaming, I have this little banner at the bottom. It says "Never share, expose, see phrase, private keys, and not click on random links." Right, and this is all tied to please be aware of what you're supposed to be minding in crypto, right? Because if you're not minding your private keys and your seed phrase, then you're going to be exposed, right? And when you're exposed, that means your wallet's just available for the plucking, and nobody wants
Right.
that.
Right. So that's
Um,
self custody, and you don't have
right,
self custody if you don't have the keys uh,
correct,
owned privately, right? By definition,
correct,
something that is not private does not carry the definition of self custody.
correct.
So I think in your earlier point, you touched on education, and I think you're totally right about that. I feel like if you're not educated, you're gonna be manipulated. So
Yeah,
anything that you see out there, you're just gonna be falling into somebody else's funnel and will be taken advantage of, like similar to how Celsius took advantage of
many,
um, many people. And I don't think they planned to file for bankruptcy, but the
probably not.
risk the risk was understated, clearly
Right,
understated.
right. Yeah, I remember when I first looked at. I mean, it's funny because it's not like you can look at financials for these entities that permeate the fake crypto narrative or anything like that, right? So you kind of have to really know what you're looking at. And when I first came up on their website, I just instantly knew it was a scam. Just with the verbiage, right? Because why should you have to relinquish any of your assets in order for somebody else to borrow anything from some intermediary? So clearly there was some funky business going on there. And I mean, I
Yeah,
guess it takes
I
a little
mean, well,
experience. I don't
yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, anybody who is onboarding you and they're saying they're onboarding you into crypto, but you don't have any keys that are your own, they're not onboarding you to crypto. They're onboarding your
know.
value and your money, but they're the ones playing with crypto. It's not for you.
Right. Not at all. I mean, what you're actually doing is participating in the perception of value, right? You're not participating in that actual market, because if you were, uh, you would need to deal with any intermediaries. And this is kind of one of those things that even when you're looking at the stock market, right? That's lost on people because you have all these brokers in the way, all these intermediaries, and these intermediaries actually hold your funds. Could you right? Because you're no longer. So when you think about the beginning of Wall Street, it's just like crypto. It was just random people outside standing by a tree trading tickets back and forth, stock certificates back and forth. That's literally how Wall Street started, right?
Yeah,
So that entailed you controlling your books, custodying your assets, all these things that we no longer do on this side as well. Now, What are they trying to do to crypto? Oh, obliterate that. I mean, this Mashinsky character from Celsius, all he talked about was how it's bad for you to hold your own keys. And you also have this Simon Dixon clown saying the same narrative. So
Well,
be mindful
he
of
was
those
also
people.
well he was also saying that banks are bad for you.
Oh, right, right. Even though he was playing the bank. Yeah,
Like unbank yourself. I mean, in reality,
right.
he wanted to be the bank himself, right?
Correct. And
And
if you pay
he
attention to what this Dixon gentleman is doing, he's trying to start a Bitcoin bank. Right. He's literally trying to create an investment bank monetized by Bitcoin. It's hilarious. The guy
yeah,
doesn't get it.
I think the reality of the situation is that those people they're trying to coax uh,
Sure.
uh, blockchain value into something that's old and been used for a long time, so that
Yes.
they can say, "Hey, see this blockchain thing? It has a lot of value. We're making it available, something that you used to use before, like you know, a bank or E-Trade, or here's like another platform
Right.
that is a derivative of blockchain." And then at the same time, they take all of your money, and
Yep.
and you have no protection, right? So
Zero.
so the benefit of a blockchain was supposed to be is that you're protected against the thing that they're designing.
Correct.
And that is
And
where I feel like education
everybody.
is vital, so that people
Right.
really understand the difference what they're getting into, and what
Yes.
really blockchain really is, right? And so
Yes.
if you embed in your brain what the first principles of blockchain is, then you should be resistant to the funneling tactics that will take your money.
Correct.
And like the thing with Coinbase, right? So like Coinbase in May, they announced on Twitter, actually, they said, "Hey, by the way, if we file for bankruptcy, we're going to take all your coins and use it to pay
Yeah.
off our investors," right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
as soon as I saw that, I removed all of the funds that I had on Coinbase. I didn't have a lot, but whatever I had is gone.
Yeah. Out of principle. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, no, listen. I mean, if I were to use E-Trade, and if I were to buy Amazon shares, and if E-Trade goes bankrupt, at least my Amazon shares belong to me and they can
Yeah.
be transferred to another broker, right?
Yeah. Yep.
No such thing will happen with Coinbase.
Nope.
So with Coinbase, you think you own Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever else that you have in your portfolio. It doesn't really belong to you,
Nope.
right? It
It's
it
it's like
literally they
go ahead.
spell
Go
it
ahead.
out for you. They spell it out. I
Yes.
mean, but what happened to all the time when they didn't announce it? Like, what about the 5 years earlier? Nobody knew that that was kind of the case. I mean, there is a really, really fine print out there, but people have expectations, and those expectations were not managed. Like, why didn't they tweet it about it when they started the company? By the
Yeah.
way,
Exactly.
if you were to give us your money, this money may disappear, so don't give us too much, right? But that kind of goes against their the business tenants, right? They want people's
Sure.
money, so they're incentivized not to talk about it, which
Right.
is what's really sad about centralization, right?
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
why I don't like anything that has very large corporate oversight of anything, because the customer is often is the product,
Yes.
and you think you're an investor, but you're not. You're
You're not.
paying somebody else's dividends,
Salary. Something.
salary, and you are the investment of somebody else who is an investor who will benefit should the shit hit the fan.
I mean, so it's one of those things that's very difficult for a novice to see, because when they're coming in, they have these expectations, like we were talking about a minute ago, of they're gonna make all this money, they're not gonna lose a cent, right? But the reality is so far different from that, and this is kind of why I like to promote Hex personally. Before Hex, I never would have considered speaking about anything or trying to educate anybody financially about anything. I never talked about trading or anything like that. And the whole reason is because of this embedded risk, right? Like you can teach somebody whatever, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be good at it
Right.
or not, whatever the case is, right? So you got to think about what this person is going through, what's the most optimal outcome with the least possible downside risk. And when I think about that, that automatically leads me to Hex. Just because of how it works, because of what it does, because of the fact that it provides a yield. I mean, if you were one of the people that were around in the early days, pre big payday 2020, you made out like a bandit, right? And a lot of people like to make that claim. But what I like to say is, why can't you still continue to make out like a bandit? Because nothing's changed. We're still so early. Um, you know, what what is a potentiality for something that works consistently and works consistently well, right? That's very hard to pull off in the game of software, and even more difficult to pull off in a monetary sense. Does that make sense? Like, so like, how does Hex really? Because this is the thing. When I think of Hex, I think here's this thing that could really change people's frame of mind because of how it works. Because if you understand how time works and you understand that the dollar only goes in one direction and you give yourself enough time, the amount of return you can make based on your investment with those basic understandings are very substantial, because math is a powerful thing. And if we find ourselves in a position where, like, look at where we are right now, 95% down, right? The last time we were down like this was big payday. And man, that's the best trade I ever made in my life. Still up. I've never seen a down day from that point in time because I bought the dip, right? Because I'm understanding the difference between monetary reality, which is the one we have to deal with in dollar terms, because that's the whole reason why investing exists in the first place. A dollar today or a penny today is not worth a penny tomorrow. So all these things, right? Because I keep running my mouth and I don't stop, are why cryptocurrency exists. And Hex really just spins that whole notion on his head, because here we are with a very nice, neatly packaged, neatly engineered monetary policy that's outperforming, in fact. And a lot of people don't even realize that. Because if I got some charts, we should go through them actually. Give me a second. But we'll go through these charts that I make. This is what I'm known for. I'm known for making all these charts. And these charts show us what's going on the actual blockchain for Hex. So like what's happening with the T-share rate, what are the returns? Oh, and this is something we could also talk about is, the how am I able to ascertain how Hex is a logarithmic base 2 system, right? Because this is something people ask me about all the time. And it's something that I think when two people that are quantitatively adept get together can talk about, it makes it even more interesting to discuss, because a lot of people just aren't aware of how to analyze data. And that's something that's very, I think, easy to learn, because when you start understanding how to think about data, it's not something that's very difficult, because data has to make sense, right? And that's what's most difficult for people to wrap their head around, because they're led into this false sense of complexity, right? I mean, we see this all over academia when all these things are really not that complex. It's just sitting down, breaking down all these layers and putting in the work. And that's really, most people don't want to put in the work, but that's really the answer to most things. Uh, but it's like, how do we take something like Hex, um, and understand that this can change the game, because it's very foreign, right? Because it's just like you said a moment ago. You got you got these meme coins, which are easy and simple to understand. Then you got this thing like Hex, which is a whole ecosystem. It really is. You can build a company on top of Hex and, get in trouble with the SEC that way. Right? Like you could literally do a lot of things with Hex. And how do you like, what kind of future do you see? Right? Because a meme coin is straightforward. But the problem to me with a meme coin is that those narratives have uh they have an expiration date. They don't last forever. Whereas something like Hex, well, it's kind of required. You kind of need something like that because people need to make money. They don't need to laugh though. They need to make money. They need to eat, right? I don't know. It's a weird kind of line of thinking, but it's kind of true. I mean, you when you need to earn, need to eat. Sure, you got to find some humor, but you're not gonna pay for it. You know what I mean? Humor is gonna be free in that instance. You're not paying
Right.
for it, so this is kind of the thing that always points me to Hex. It's like, well, the utility, utility, product market fit. Yeah, we all like a good laugh. We all like a good meme, sure, but when the rubber hits the road, what do we really want? We want returns. That's not coming because something's funny, right?
Yeah. Well, returns, they're denominated in fiat, right?
Right.
And
Not in
here's
crypto.
right. So
Typically.
here's the funny thing about returns in fiat is that let's do a thought experiment for the sake of argument. If we call the money fiat a social contract for future services, so I have $100 in my pocket. I know tomorrow I can get a full tank of gas, right? So that is the future me having certainty that I can drive. Now, let's say tomorrow most of the gas stations don't sell gas anymore, and the price of gas quadruples, right?
Yeah.
Now my $100 can only buy a quarter tank of gas, so I can go a quarter the distance. Now, if we look at hacks in that instance, and I'm not, let's just say that it's not just gas, it's just everything. Everything became 4 times more expensive.
Right.
So it is quite likely. I mean, there's let's consider two possibilities. Number one, we think that hacks should actually quadruple in value because nothing changed in hacks because of the inflation, right? So
Right.
the
Right.
general narrative of crypto was basically this: is that if inflation is ever persistent and it's moving higher, then the crypto of any kind should move higher too.
Hmm.
Now, unfortunately, the reality is that the human mind still thinks in dollars,
Hmm.
and that
That's right.
if most of the goods and services and food and energy and everything you need goes up 4 times, you're gonna be freaking out and selling your crypto.
And that's
And
what's happened, right?
right, I mean, it's true, right? Because everything
Hmm.
is in a dollar, everything is in
Yeah.
fiat.
That's
So
right.
you
That's
would
how
be
we started
selling,
this little line of conversation. That's right.
yeah. So you would be selling all of it, and it's gonna dump hard, 99%. You're gonna take your dollars and you're gonna continue to live, right? And hopefully
Yeah.
your salary will be adjusted higher. So for crypto, I wouldn't say that this sort of an inflation shock is actually beneficial.
No,
Now,
not at all.
in, now if we imagine a different world, slightly different, where crypto is actually accepted as a token of value for future services, now that is something else entirely, right? Because
Hmm.
it is likely that you wouldn't need to sell the crypto to convert to dollars and dump it.
Right.
You could just continue to use crypto. And since crypto is in a, is we think, we hope, in most of the cases, like in originally what Bitcoin was, is an immutable contract. Well, Bitcoin was not a contract, but Hex is. So Hex is an immutable contract without the admin keys. Nobody can force inflation in Hex at this point, and that's the truth as delivered to us by blockchain. So blockchain
Yeah.
is tells the truth, right? There's no way to change it. Nobody should be able to change Hex contract and cause an inflation bug by inserting a piece of code into it.
Right.
It should be there forever. I mean, of course, if it had admin keys and there was a person who could control it, then anything could happen. And actually, with Bitcoin, it can happen because the Bitcoin Foundation can push the changes of how the miner should be behaving, and that will change its value. So Bitcoin is not as secure as people think.
Right.
So Richard often brings this example of a safe within a safe,
Yeah.
and that would be in Ethereum proof of work or proof of stake later, and then a contract that is it's like a virtual machine that's executed by Ethereum, but it doesn't have the necessity to secure itself. It is secured by the rest of the miners on Ethereum. So that being the case, back to the inflation, if Hex, for example, is the equivalent of fiat and nobody can change its code, and all of a sudden the fiat currency got printed by Federal Reserve, then the delta, the difference between the amount of dollars versus the total amount of Hex should actually drive Hex value higher. And I'm not just saying just Hex. It would be anything
Yeah.
that doesn't have admin keys
Right.
should do that,
Right.
or anything
Because
that
there's
doesn't have an
no
inflation that's higher than the
correct.
government's mandated inflation.
Right. Yeah, because the whole idea is that you're finding the value that you need somewhere, right? Because that's the whole point. The whole point is about what happens when people need to find value and there's no more value to be had in that area where they used to be, right? And we're
Yeah,
kind of already finding ourselves there in a lot of ways. Because, I mean, when you look at what Wall Street does and like their place, right, in the economic landscape, it's one of selling you a story, right? And that's kind of the problem because when people buy that story, they don't realize that they're not being told all the details, right? It's kind of like when you're watching a movie that's coming from a book. There's a lot of stuff that you're not getting to see. And when you're taking a story from some third party that has no vested interest in you finding any monetary success, but just being nickeled and dimed, you know, a lot of people can't see that, right? They can't understand that this is why crypto exists. So they overlook the significance of something like Hex this early, right? This is part and parcel or part of the problem of a meme coin, right? Because people don't understand the difference between speculation and a realistic nexus of value, right? Because we humans determine value by how we interact with things. It's not really by any determined metric, right? And this is kind of the issue with fiat. Fiat is a thing where people operate under this presumption where you're going to get something that you're supposed to get and you actually never do, right? Even when you look at these athletes, they sign these multi-million-dollar deals, but they're not getting those millions. They're getting fractions of that contract at some point in the future because inflation doesn't care, right?
right. Well, I would say, my 2 cents on inflation is basically this. I mean, look, anything that has value that is represented by a token is part of a social contract. So it's not that the we're interacting with goods and services, we're interacting with the society and other people.
Right.
Money is the glue that binds society together,
That's right.
and that's what's keeping us civilized.
Yes.
Like think about it. If we didn't have the money, I would be running around on the street with a long stick, trying to break people's skulls and they take their stuff,
Well,
right?
I try to explain this all the time. Uh, I try to highlight why negative things happen, and it's because of poor economics. People that are in need are going to do what they have to do to survive. And that spectrum is very broad. And this is why bad things happen, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think ultimately what gives value anything to any token is the social order. Without the social
right,
order, we cannot agree on value. And that's the underlying
premise.
principle of life and
Yeah,
and safety and security and progress. Now, what's interesting with blockchain is that it's not that the social order is enforced, but the value is enforced by an immutable program that is maintained and secured by a multitude of miners or stakers out there. So you don't have to trust another entity because you have a consensus mechanism that is
right,
trusted by majority. So the majority is what people. So like anybody who participates in mining of any kind, they have to agree that consensus is the right thing, right?
right,
Otherwise, they cannot get value of participation. So it is the
correct,
first time in history, and I would say in the last 10 years, where the value got encoded into an anonymous, open source, completely transparent participation of an exchange of economic energy across the net, right? The open internet.
right,
And that is what is so exciting to me. And that I think is the core of education that people really lack in terms of understanding what blockchain is and what it means for the world.
right.
And
And
so what I'm hoping, and a lot of people ask me like, what am I up to? What am I doing with my life? Am I
right,
retired? This and that. So after Google, I actually haven't been retired any single year. I mean, I ran startups, doing all kinds of things, did research, hired people, fired people, made good business deals, made bad business deals. I seen a lot of things happen, right? And it was super exciting. I mean, I wouldn't trade it. I'm not the person to buy a huge yacht and park it by the island and tan all day, right? That's just like
right,
not me. I don't think that's a life worth living. So what I'm thinking to do, especially with I mean the last 3 years was 2 years, 3 years was a huge wake up call for humanity
for
about
sure.
how we really need to help each other and
That's right.
our interdependence on goodwill of everyone out there and how we can use technology to for the betterment of humankind everywhere. And I'm talking about like all countries, right? Not
Hmm.
just like United States or Canada or Mexico. I mean, think about it. So the blockchain is a multinational universal phenomenon that can share value and benefit across the species the way we
Yeah.
know it. And the way that I really understood that was kind of like a funny example. So people were contacting me from Philippines, and they said, "Hey, uh, send us $5,000 in crypto. We're gonna be playing Axie Infinity, and we'll be sharing the yield of our fights with other, within the game, and we'll be keeping 50%, and the 50% is yours, and you will be making a lot of money." And what's interesting is in Philippines, it is people don't make a lot of money, right, in
Right,
terms of
right.
dollars per capita or um, the sort of economic energy per hours worked. And
For
so what a
sure.
lot of people decided to do, they said, "Hey, I don't want to work in McDonald's or flip burgers or be
Waste away.
a janitor. I
Yeah.
could play online, participate in this crypto economy. I can become a solicitor for an investment money so that I can buy the Axie Infinity animals and I can have them fight for this other person who lives in America, and I can make 10 times more dollars per hour just doing something that's enjoyable, and don't even have to use my own money because people are willing to do it. And so what's
Yeah.
interesting about this is that the society connects across blockchain. So Philippines and United States, or Philippines and UK, or whatever, Germany and Vietnam, right? So it never really happened before. It was always through some sort of red tape where the
Sure.
banks had to be involved, and you know there you had to use the KYC. Well,
Yeah.
KYC is relatively new concept, but you know what I mean, right? Like you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
possibly
Money
have
rules,
a
really.
business relationship with
Yeah.
someone who you haven't seen or been verified by some sort of a governmental uh, social acceptable ID, right? But
Hmm.
right now, the blockchain is that ID. You can be identified by your wallet address, and you can be anonymous, and you can share and exchange value and benefit each other. So let's say that I don't care about playing Axie Infinity or collecting NFTs, or doing anything, or staking things for profit. I could literally have other people uh, do it for me that will benefit greatly. And that's how we can actually connect uh, cross border without anybody out there telling us how we should be doing it, right?
Yeah.
So no central authority, no platform of any kind that takes a huge tax. I mean, they'll eventually get there because they would want to take tax, or implement some sort of. I mean, I don't even know how it's possible to have an import tax on something that is exchanged from some other country to this country and vice versa across blockchain. I think that is what is really scary for the governments right now.
Oh, there's so much that's so scary for them because you know. So how do Western economies work? Right. I even have a stream on that because it's really just layer upon layer upon layer upon, and you know, you as a person that actually runs businesses can speak to this better than I can because I'm just giving you what I know from what I see and from what I read and stuff like that. But you know, in reality, the economy is designed to work how it works because everybody's coerced to follow these random rules that actually usurp your constitutional rights, just your basic human rights, right? Never mind constitution or not, just your basic human rights, because you can't transact freely, just as you stated. This is a major problem. I mean, where did passports even come from? Most people don't even know. They just accept it, right? And this is what happens. We all just accept these random things that don't add any value and only really hinder our existence. We do it every day, all day. This is why we accept a dollar as a unit of account, not realizing we don't actually have to. And here's the problem. It takes everybody, not just some bodies. And this is how we get duped into continuously playing this game that only they can win at because it's their
Well,
game.
I feel like that's a very good point. But I feel like if you an agreement with another entity, you don't need to know who that entity is. The blockchain can enforce that agreement of an
That's right.
exchange of value or social economic energy
Hmm.
between two entities, and government shouldn't really be in the middle there.
Right.
So
But that's the beauty of it. That's exactly why cryptocurrency in its true form is so dangerous. Right. This is why we see this whole what I like to call furu landscape. Now, a furu is just a fake guru, and they permeate they permeate the crypto space in numbers, right? Because what they can't afford is for people to actually be properly educated.
yeah,
That's what they can't afford. I mean, they go out of their way to make sure that people like me and where I come from don't pick up a book, because that's the
yeah.
worst thing that could happen is people picking
So
up a book.
yeah, totally. So I think education plays a huge key in it, and open internet and open communication. Like, for
Ooh,
example, the stream we're doing on YouTube that is watched by people, that is a conversation that people can literally uh, listen and watch and participate in, and get education for free,
right,
right? And that was the tenets of, first of all, open source. Open source is always better because more people participate and they make it better, and they have no economic incentive to make it better. They just want
make it
to
make it better.
they want to make it better, right? So Linux
Yeah,
operating system is more secure, was more secure than Sun Microsystem Solaris system, because it was for
right,
profit, and there were all kinds of centralized entities that try to, to squeeze the top dollar, right? Where
right,
Linux was an internationally worked on project, across the world, and they designed something that was so much better, right? And so I feel like blockchain, when it comes to value, is a huge part of it. It also launched as open source, and again, education should also be open source. I mean, like, think about how much money people are paying to all of those colleges nowadays. It's ridiculous.
oh boy,
You
yeah.
know, what are they learning there? I mean, are they learning to do their homework and to be diligent, right?
To be in
To
high
live
school
their
still.
Yeah, I mean, what are we learning? I mean, like, listen, you want to learn about differential equations? Go on YouTube. There's hours and hours and hours of
Endless.
endless lessons that
Endless.
you can self-learn, self-teach
Yeah.
yourself, and become an expert if you want to. If you want to be,
Because
you just
you're
need to
gonna
have a
be teaching
desire.
yourself anyway, right? Because the professor isn't gonna be there teaching you anything.
Yeah, I mean, like, why? I'm not saying that. I mean, maybe for some people, the social aspect is important. I mean, for me,
Sure,
Stanford was a key pivotal moment. I didn't even go to Stanford, and I met Sergey, right?
sure. But at the
So
same point in time, you didn't even go there.
that's exactly right. I paid nothing to Stanford to be on their campus, right? So
Exactly.
it was kind of like, I would say, an open source experience, just being there and soaking in the knowledge and information from Stanford. We would go to their bookstore. We would even go to certain, like, free lectures that we would listen about cosmology, just because we were interested in quantum physics and what's going on in the universe and how people think.
Right.
Stanford was offering those type of talks for free, and that was super great. And so I think education is definitely key, and there's many different ways now that you can get at that education. Again, you can go on YouTube. So I often joke with my friends that they ask me, "How do you know all those things?" And I'm like, "Well, I go to YouTube University. I never left. It's been 20. It's been 15 years,
That's
right?
right. Yes.
I'm a student enrolled in YouTube University. I take daily classes in
Yeah.
YouTube,
Yeah. It's
and
funny because
so
it's so. It took me a while to figure that out, man. It really took me a while to figure out how crucial YouTube is for society. And they really go out of their way to manipulate it as well. But I didn't mean to cut you off. Please continue.
yeah, no, you didn't. And so what I really want to do moving forward is, and I've been talking to some friends that I have about it, is that I want to launch what I would call a fair crypto foundation, which is nonprofit, basically nothing like an institution or anything, but a platform that help people understand what the fair crypto really is, what the tenets of blockchain is, how to get at understanding what is valuable, what is not, what is scam and what is not. Maybe do some projects that can help people to learn more about crypto without necessarily taking their money in any way. So just completely nonprofit.
Man.
And I think people can benefit from that. And surprisingly, I feel like um, back in the day, meme coins inadvertently were the sort of an educational tool for people to play with, because, like, imagine, Shiba Inu coin worth five zeros and one, right? And I think the story was that somebody 3 years ago, or whenever it launched, he was I think Amazon warehouse worker or something like that. He put $5,000 into Shiba Inu, and he walked out with 2 billion. 5,000 to 2 billion in just 2 years. It's incredible, right?
That's not a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's nuts, right? So like, and I feel like a lot of people when they participate in this sort of like meme universe, they get to play with things and be exposed to crypto without losing their shirt, like, so to speak.
Right,
And Hex is very similar because Hex has the financial mechanics in it that, first of all, teaches people about self custody, teaches
right,
people what the Howey test is and what is security and what is a commodity and why it's important. And what else? Your keys, your coins, transparency, why being transparent on nomics is a thing. What does 90% transparency means, right? Compare it to
yeah,
Ethereum, compare it to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is only 45% transparent, right? What does it mean? Does it mean that the 65% of the volume is not real? Well, probably a good number of it is not real, right? What does it mean for
right,
value of Bitcoin? Is the value of Bitcoin even real, right? So I just wish there were more cryptocurrencies out there similar to Hex that had the transparency score, uh, that were trading on chain without the centralized oversight and could expose more people to the mechanics of what value really is and what
right,
value is meant to be.
right.
So,
Yeah. That value conversation is really the biggest knowledge gap for most people. And this is the perfect story I love to bring up just to help highlight how much of a gap it is. One time I was talking to one of my colleagues on the street, and I was explaining the whole crypto deal to them. And I don't talk about it much, right? Because I'm basically like a Trojan horse, right? I work inside the beast, belly of the beast, so I can't be talking about this stuff. So, anyways, we're talking one day, and I'm explaining and all this stuff, and they're getting it. They're getting hacks all the way up until the point that I'm like, yeah, but you can't physically touch it. At that point, everything just, I lost them right there. Like they just couldn't wrap their head around the fact that even in the economy right now, they cannot touch what they currently have as their net worth or whatever the case is, whatever that number is in their head, right? They cannot touch it. And this is difficult for most people to wrap their head around because people really think that these ones and zeros are real. But again, right? The best trick the devil ever pulled. And this is what happens with this notion of value. If we don't understand what value is and where it's derived from, we're gonna always be left in the dark, just like we are right now.
and at the same time, after you understand what value is, which is what I believe is a social construct, when
Right,
it comes to social economic energy, you also need to understand how that value is secured,
right.
right? Who is securing your dollars? What
Your
is happening
value.
in the world to secure? And basically it's like this: it's the number of hours you have put out into the world to do something useful for society so that you get paid for it. And then what happens tomorrow or a month later or a year later with the value that you have generated for yourself, right? So that is the biggest question: who is in control of the retention of the value? And of course, I
Right.
mean, we that's a huge conversation in itself.
Yes.
Investors generally make their money work, right? So the
Correct.
money should never be sitting idle anywhere. The money should always participate in helping somebody else to take off the ground, whether you're helping a friend out to start their business, or you're investing um, in some interesting project, or you're investing in yourself when it comes to learning new things so that you can make better decisions moving forward, right? So that's also a key thing.
Right. I try to. That's. a big part of my whole, I guess, agenda is to get people to do just that. And I even say it repeatedly. Like, don't listen to what I'm saying. Take what I'm saying and make it your own.
Yeah.
Because the way I think isn't going to be the way you think, but you need the information that I have to share.
Yeah.
But the only way you can make this information yours is by you taking it and making it yours.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just, like me giving you a stock tip, not doing much for you.
Right, right. So like here's a good example. So let's say that you're participating in this game of crypto economy and you made a good trade. You got in into Hex early, or Shiba Inu, or Doge very early, or maybe you bought Bitcoin at a dollar, right? Now you made your millions. Okay, what's next?
Right.
What are you gonna do with those dollars, right? Do you actually have the skills to make that money not only work for you, but also help the world to be better?
Right.
Because ultimately, we get paid in value only when we help the rest of the planet somehow.
That's right.
And I feel like, so I mean, Elon Musk, he gets a lot of flack for being, the crazy person that he is, right? But he's actually very inspiring, to me specifically. And anybody who is listening, you can see his interview when people asked him, why are you starting an automotive company knowing that your chance of failure is like very, very high, like 80% you're going to fail.
Right.
And so he said, uh, certain things are important enough to try, even if the failure is very, very, very high. And so he did that. And now we see
Right.
Teslas everywhere,
I
right? And
remember
he
that.
changed the automotive industry. Everybody's like, oh, oh crap, we have to like rethink the combustible engine. We shouldn't be driving something that's exploding under us, and perhaps, an electric energy could be even more efficient and do better than a combustible engine. And guess what? So he goes on and develops the rockets that land themselves, right? Going after another industry that's completely owned by the government, and wins again, right? And so the moral of the story there, and I would say that Elon is very much like Larry Page, and I know Larry Page pretty well. So one of the things that Larry Page told me that was also very inspiring, he said that a lot of people do not want to compete against what they perceive as big things and difficult to compete against. The the truth, however, is that when you're competing against the simple things, you have a lot bigger markets that are trying to compete against you. Like, for example, inventing a new toothbrush, right? There's 100 companies that are working on a better toothbrush, or better toilet paper roll, right? But if you decide to come up with a new car, you don't actually have a lot of people competing against you because nobody have the balls to do it, or
Yeah, you're right
especially in the
about that.
space industry. Like,
Yeah.
imagine like tomorrow you decide to come up with you know a rocket ship that is better than the NASA is building. Like, the idea is preposterous.
Right.
But if you do decide to do it, then you have no competition. You're only that one person in the private
Yeah, I'm probably
sector,
one of
or
one.
one off, right?
Yeah.
And so Larry Page, he explained to me, saying, look, it is much easier to compete against the bigger things in the world than against the smaller things, because you end up being drowned in the minutiae of things, where the world may not even benefit from a better toothbrush or better toilet paper roll.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's one of those interesting things because, I and this is gonna sound weird, but I've always thought about like the toilet paper problem. Like toilet paper isn't efficient, but nobody comes up with something better. Right? Like we all know toilet paper isn't the best method, but nothing better has been, outside of a bidet, really, like nothing better has been made.
Yeah.
Like there's no practical application for you to clean your behind better physically, right? Without water and all this stuff.
Well,
So
maybe
this is
maybe we're thinking about this all wrong. Maybe if we didn't take the number 2, then we wouldn't need the toilet paper.
Right. Good luck with that one.
So maybe we need some sort of gene editing sequence
Yeah.
to stop eating
Imagine that.
and pooping, and then
Or,
the
or
toilet
just
problem is solved.
eat a whole bunch of algae and just urinate. Problem solved.
Yeah,
If that even works that way. I'm taking a
yeah.
shot in the dark
I
there.
mean,
I don't know.
imagine the shock to the toilet paper industry
Yeah.
when something like this comes out.
I mean, all the trees we would have. Wow. I don't really know how much trees are used for that. I'm just talking shit.
Amazing, yeah, amazing.
But it's just the thought process, right? Just the thought process of this is what it takes, right? To so like what happened when if you look at how America operates, because this is what I thought was going to happen, and I don't think it's happened. Let me know what you think, because you've been here pretty much the whole time too. I thought that the use of paper was really going to become like like it was gonna fall back, like it was just gonna really cease in like quantities and great quantities. And I don't feel like that's what's happened with the advent of the digital age whatsoever. I feel like even though we have all of these abilities, right, to digitize information, we still find ways to make it physical. So, I go as far as to say that we use technology all wrong because we overly rely on it too much, in my opinion. That's my honest opinion with respect to tech. I think people use it too much for too many things. It should only really be used for the passage of information, but only useful, critical information, not everything, right? And it's not to say we should control the flow of information, but I think if we respected our time more, right, that would probably give us a better vantage point, personal vantage point to find success. Because I know until I didn't find better ways to manage my time, I didn't find any kind of success whatsoever. Not as far as educating myself or anything like that. So it's a weird thing because we're here talking about this completely new industry, which is cryptocurrency, where people could make the kind of money where they can retire in short periods of time. But how do you how do you intentionally make that decision? Because I feel like the people that found Hex and got in early, right? Like a lot of them didn't intentionally make that decision that, yo, this is the ticket, right? All of this stuff is typically risk based assessment. When I found Hex, I knew this was the shit. There was no question in my mind, and there still isn't. And the price performance has kind of shown us that people are just dismayed by a measly 90% dip after a 256x. But I understand the math. So to me, it's neither here nor there. It's just a small bump along the way. But how do you get, well, at least how do you think you get the average person to kind of understand that they don't understand value? Because that's kind of hard.
That is an
It's a tough
epic
one.
question in itself.
Yeah, it
How
is.
do we understand value? But hey, I actually tweeted about it. And
I know
how
that
do
was a good
how
tweet.
how do we why does crypto have value, right? And so I
Hmm.
came up with a formula which basically is a delta of the world's economy's inflation
Hmm.
minus the programmable inflation for the cryptocurrency of choice,
Hmm.
multiplied by the adoption percentage. How
The network
how
effect is
widely
impacting the network.
how widely is it used?
Right.
Like, for example, if you launch the cryptocurrency and 2 people used it, it has no value. It doesn't
Right.
matter what the inflation is, or it could be just 10 coins, right? There was zero because there's no adoption. So the adoption is the multiplier that is absolutely need it. And I feel like, and again, meme coins are a very good example. So they have infinite inflation, meme coins,
Right.
right? Like I think Doge is like making 10, is it 10,000 or 10 million a day? I don't know. But
I don't
anyway,
know.
let's say it's some sort of large number. The funny thing about this is that if the adoption of the crypto project is moving faster than its inflation, it will actually run up. So it will actually move higher in dollar terms, which is almost an oxymoronic in itself. But it makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
it does. It does.
It makes sense because the total number of people with their dollars who want to play that game is the acceleration, the flow of money is faster than the ability for the crypto to print itself.
Right.
Now the
Which
thing
drives up
about
the value of said crypto, right?
right, so right now if we imagine uh, the marketing potential for crypto, any crypto, it's almost exponential. Like it's not linear, it's actually exponential. So in other words, if 3.5% in the world use crypto today, then you could technically be doubling it every year, and that in itself is a geometric progression. It's not arithmetic progression. It's not a multiple. A double of a double of a double is a parabola. It's x to the x squared, right? But I think it's more like x to the y, where y is what is happening in the world. So the adoption could be much, 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 much faster. So any sort of inflation out there, unless it's geometric, is unlikely to put it to dampen the value and the price rising for any crypto. And that's why meme coins actually went up in price just because of adoption. And so Elon tweeted something about Doge, and it went to 57 cents. No, that was Hex. I think it went to like 70 something cents. I forget. But anyway, it's crazy. It was four zeros and one, and all of a sudden it's like 70 cents. And
Yeah, it went to
only
like
took,
80 cents almost, I think. Something
yeah,
like
it took one person to say, hey, this is the thing,
that.
play
Right.
with it.
Right.
And he has so many followers, he single-handedly moved the price, right? I'm not gonna get into the ethics of doing it.
Yeah, no, that's
I don't
irrelevant. We're
I
just
don't think
talking
it was
about
super
the
ethical,
functionality and
but I
and the
think
after effect, right?
yeah, but I think when it comes to marketing is so vital to, or adoption is so vital to any crypto project. It almost trumps any underlying mechanics of any kind.
Hmm.
And generally, what gets you the world is the truth, right? If you're lying about something, that is the world, eventually you're gonna find enough intelligent people to call you out, and then you're dead.
Yep.
So there's no point launching projects. I mean, you would only hope to lie to enough people to pump the value and then dump it. And that's why a lot of people are not really willing to come out with their identities. They're hiding.
Correct.
They're hiding because their genesis is based on lies.
Yep.
And they can smooth it however they like. They would say that they're channeling their inner Satoshi. Bullshit like that.
Right, right,
It's
right.
all bullshit. Right. The truth is that they just think that if they're gonna make it big, that they want to be the first one to pull the rug,
Right.
do a rug pull. Right.
Right.
Now, if you launch something that is truthful in its nature, that it has the biggest chance of accumulating enough people through adoption, right?
Hmm.
Because people who, I'm not saying people need to be true believers because blockchain takes it away. Blockchain does not lie, so you do not need to have
Yeah.
a cult.
You know what's funny? Hey, I gotta interrupt you, but it kills me every time. Every time I see a tweet that says "I believe in crypto" or "I believe in Hex" or "I," like, yeah, you don't gotta believe in anything. The math don't give a rat's ass if you believe or not. It just is. And I think very few people have the capacity to grasp that they have to go out of their way to type I believe. Your belief is so irrelevant. It's not even funny. You better learn some math. Better learn how to believe in that.
Yeah. Well, what's great about blockchain is that it negates the requirement for you to believe anything,
Correct.
because consensus does it for you.
That's right.
And that's the invention of our lifetimes, right here and
That's
there.
right. That's exactly what. Yeah, and this is kind of this is the thing that really lights a fire under me because I've never been good at dealing with people, but I sure as hell am good at dealing with numbers and dealing with data and dealing with facts and dealing with all these things that make a qualitative and quantitative world. Because that's one thing that's very difficult for people to wrap their head around. While the world is what it is, there are two things that make it: quantitative factors and qualitative factors. And in order for you to be able to understand what's actually going on, you have to be able to pull back and pluck on both. Because if not, you're going to miss something. And it's not going to be something you actually want to miss. And, again, it just goes back to putting in the work. And this is something we've been essentially saying this whole time in very long ways. But it ultimately boils down to just being interested in understanding that you want to be educated and seeking that education, right?
Yeah. Well, looks like we have a question from Alan.
Yeah, let's see what. Thank you for the super chat, Alan. Let's see what you got here. Do you see any similarities between how early we are in crypto now to how early you were in the information age when it came to the fore back in the day?
You know, here's the thing. No matter what year you begin anything, you're early for something.
That's
So
so true.
when I started at Google, I thought I missed the computer revolution.
It
Like,
was 1999 after all, right?
yeah, yeah.
It
The
seems
the
like it.
the 1992 to 1999, which was the top of the time, felt like the whole computer age just passed me, and I was too late in it, for it. And nothing was further from the truth. From what I learned is that if your eyes are open and you understand the present deeply, then you can understand the future better than the rest of us. Now, I know the specific question is about crypto. Now, what gets me excited is that everybody's like freaking out in the government about it.
Yep.
So if everybody's freaking out, um, that actually means that we're still early,
Hmm.
because it's not a thing that people are no longer taking crypto lightly. And yes, unfortunately, people lost billions, but at the same time, this is just the growing pains. We're
Hmm.
separating bad actors from good actors, and we're I would say, if I were to compare the early internet of 1992, and Prodigy and AOL or America Online was the first graphical interface to the zeros and ones.
Yeah.
They didn't make any
Binary.
sense, right, to a lot of
Right.
people. We're kind of like where we are with crypto today. We literally, it feels like we just invented the browser, um, and internet is about to take off, and something amazing is coming. So that's how I feel about it. So I think, like, yes, we're super early. I think there will be a lot of trial and errors. More people will lose money, and a lot more people will make money. And so I think, again, if you self-educate, if you understand what you're getting into, then you can learn to separate the bad actors from the good actors.
Very critical. Everything you just said is pretty much everything I've been trying to get people to understand for a very long time. And the fact of the matter is that there is not enough instances in which you can share that message and it be enough. And this is something that I've learned with time, because the fact is that you got new bodies entering this space every day, and all of these new folks are searching for a way out. of some negative aspect of their life that requires them to come all the way out here, right? Because this is far out there for a lot of people. A lot of people don't understand stocks, never mind this.
Yeah.
Right? And this is what's so unique about what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, and I wholeheartedly agree with your perception of where we are in time, and with conjunction with what happened with the internet, because we're at that point where now everybody is seeing a lot of things that they were not seeing before. And when people start seeing things, they don't just unsee, right? And this is very important to understand, because this is exactly where these bifurcations in time happen. We're at a point in time where, things are either going to go left or they're going to go right. And it's very difficult for people to see that. But that's exactly where I think we are, because just as you so eloquently put it, these governments are freaking out and we can see it. You
Yeah.
got BlackRock involved, you got all these entities all of the sudden getting involved. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, oh, no, 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 no. We don't want to know anything about this crypto stuff. It's the bane of everybody's existence. It's a scam. Don't talk about it. Don't look at it. Don't breathe it. Don't nothing. Now, oh, no, no, no. Give me some more. Please. I haven't
Yeah.
had enough yet.
Well,
It's funny how we exchange.
I feel like this sort of Black Rocks of the world being involved. What they're trying to do is they're trying to control the crypto value economically. So they want to hold the pricing power on it because they understand, or I would say the people on top or the suits or whatever we call them,
Hmm. Hmm.
they understand that the Pandora's box is open and crypto cannot be put back in.
That's right.
The self custody and ability for self sovereignty when it comes to your store of value cannot be put back in a box. And so what they're trying to do, and I feel like that's the case, may not be true, but who the hell knows? I think they're basically saying, look, if we can make a ton of products out of it and squeeze the blockchain's first principles out of it by controlling the price, then it may as well not exist, or we'll control it completely.
Right.
So I think that is the attempt that is being in the works right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I've been trying to show people that that's what's been going on through time, and this was a long. I mean, at least in my mind, I used to go to these pages where we could see the volume that was transmitting, and we would just do comparative analysis, percentage wise, like what's the valuation of traded hex versus the market cap. Well, and we would look at this right through various coins, and you would see, right, this is stuff I used to do back in the, you would see all of these different things that just didn't add up, right, in the market. And this is how you kind of pick up on, like if you look at all the on-chain volume, Hex is the only crypto besides stable coins, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Hex is right there. It's the only one with viewable, palpable on-chain volume. So when you think of these gatekeepers, or at least when I think of these gatekeepers, what I think of is these guys know they're going to make money with Hex because they can see it on the chain. So that's not the question. In my mind, it's not. In my mind, the question for them is, do we lose our other revenue sources because we only really have one if all we're doing is providing straight brokerage? Because that's all these entities end up doing if they can't really facilitate these tri-party situations where they're offering yield. when all they're really doing is taking a cut and passing it on, passing a slice on to the consumer, right? And this is part and parcel the whole landscape at this point in time, and why everything is so on edge.
Yeah. Well, I think if I was, and I don't know how they do it in China, but we should look at China to see for the direction where the authoritarian governments are getting their clues from.
Mm,
So here's a question that somebody may know: is Uniswap legal in China? It's probably illegal.
yeah, I don't think they can stop it.
Yeah.
Unless it's like behind a firewall, I don't think they can stop you from accessing it.
Well, the whole China's behind firewall. I mean,
Right. So it just depends if somebody can access it through a VPN and stuff like that.
right. So if you have a VPN, you're bypassing China's firewall. You're probably breaking some sort of a law,
For sure.
right? So if they're blocking Uniswap or any other unsanctioned trading platform by Chinese, then likely you're breaking the law again. So that is the way that the government can control what has value when it comes to
Right.
crypto.
Right.
Like they can have a government-based trading platform that basically blockchain ran by the whole country or in the government's data center somewhere, which is not really blockchain. It just looks like blockchain,
Right.
right? But you will not be able to send your whatever digital yuan out to America or Canada or Germany.
Right.
Like why would they do that? I mean, maybe they would come up with some sort of a VPN tunnel to do it, and only approved parties could be able to trade. But that's actually so surprising to me. Like the government is trying to come up with the stable coin backed by the government,
Yeah.
but what blockchain is it going to run on, right?
I, well, this is exactly why I'm fairly confident that they're not going to be able to pull off what they're trying to pull off. And this is why I'm so adamant about people understanding that education is the only way forward, because the only thing I think they're going to be able to do, and I'm looking at other examples, right, to make this assessment, like in Korea, South Korea, for example, they're already using CBDCs over there, right? And just like you said, China, how did China implement it? Well, they tricked everybody during the Rona nonsense into tying everything to their social credit score. So even, and you know what's funny, now that I think about it, this was actually the case years ago, before Rona. So all Rona did was cement it. Right now, everything is literally tied to your social, every single thing. You can't buy food in China if your social credit score does not meet certain requirements. So over here, or just in the West, they try to implement that kind of scenario in certain instances, but they failed at every turn. So they won't be able to execute that over here. And this is the kind of thing I try to tell people when they look at these all these passport ID law and all this funky stuff that these fake people that are in power that just work for the World Economic Forum come up with. People don't understand that, they don't understand how the system works, so they worry about things that they don't actually have to worry about, because it's only a matter of when they get swatted down, not if. Right now, Bitcoin is in this unique space because it's everybody is beholden to this fiat dollar, right? And how do you get people to realize that that is not what they think it is? In my head, that's really the biggest challenge that we have. And the way I like to tackle it is, when I'm talking to normies now, is just by addressing, the cost of living. For anybody that's always asking about how to onboard, that's a easy icebreaker, especially in the second half of 2022 when everything costs 20 to 30% more, right? I mean, that is reality right now. So,
That is
how
true.
How do you come to a point where we get people to really grasp the severity of this technology? Well, it's about understanding that here's this thing that you can actually visually corroborate is real, etc., etc. All these fancy things, right, that we all want and love, but we don't actually know that we actually want and love it, right? And this is one of those things where how do we progress from this point forward, right? Because we're trying to get to the point where we don't look back, and that's hard because that takes everybody pulling everybody else along, even if they're not ready, right? And this is what's hard for people to understand, because how does Bitcoin get from 1 cent to 69K? Well, it's a whole confluence of factors, and you can't pretend to think that it was something that happened because it was supposed to. I think there were other factors at play there, but that's just my opinion. What do you think?
So, actually, I have a question. Did anybody ever ask you, if you had a choice to create a cryptocurrency, what would that be?
Nah, nobody's ever asked me that, but
Can I ask you
after,
that?
yeah, yeah. It's funny because when I found Hex, I was actually thinking about that. I mean, I was thinking of creating a coin because I knew Bitcoin and Ethereum were crap. Like, it's very obvious to anybody that understands economics and finance that those two coins are flawed in just in the way that they do everything about themselves, right? Just in the way that they are versus the way that they are supposed to be. That's what I mean. Okay. So very, very specific. I'm being very specific. Now, when we think about the money problem, which is what these cryptocurrencies are supposed to be solving, there is nothing out here that's actually operating in that functionality, in that nexus, right? So in my mind, I I found this thing called Hex, and I was like, crap. Even after I found it, I was still trying to find ways to say, hey, we still need to fix this money thing. Like, I didn't realize that Hex really did that. In my mind, Hex fixes the money problem, right? Because here's this inflationary coin that's on a schedule, that's trackable, traceable, and it's only on a schedule if the network or the social consensus dictates that schedule to be, meaning all these individual parties interact with this contract. Otherwise, it doesn't really exist, right? It's just this thing that's there. So in my mind, if you're not staking Hex, you're not really using it. And that's one of those things that, you know, how do you get people to understand that they gotta stake Hex? You gotta help them realize that they want to make money, even though it's not the way they think it is. Right. And that's kind of the catch 22 with crypto. It's like you're not trying to make money with this stuff because you're actually trying to replace money with it. But it's like you still do have to think about surviving in the interim because this is the process. And you just can't, usurp it or subvert it or whatever the case is. You have to, deal with it. So, how do you get to that point where you're dealing with something that's so out of this world, right? And you're trying to get people to accept it for what it is, but people can't even understand, that this thing is so important, right? Like, it's really important. Crypto is supreme, at least in my mind, because if you are able to get people to understand, like, hey, this is how we fix a lot of the problems we have, then a lot of these problems automatically disappear, right? Because how do they have us in this chokehold? Because everybody doesn't get to live the life of a savvy investor that just gets to do all these cool things, right? A lot of people have to work, but they're trying to find ways to get to that point where they are that savvy investor where they don't have to work. And I feel like something like Hex gives people that life hack because all they really have to do is stake it. And as my Indian counterpart would say, stake it and go. Right? Like you pick your time frame and hopefully it's long enough so that you're not suffering from the vestiges of fiat, value. Like some people are right now, if they got in and only did a year stake and they're already coming out and it's we're almost a year in from the top about a month and a week from now, and we're still down pretty significantly, right? A lot of people are going to be pissed by that, but if they were listening, they would have understood that this was a long term play. Nobody was trying to say, yo, stake this for a year, you're good. Whereas that would have been nice if that was the case. But, I think Hex is very uniquely a get rich slow thing. It's not a get rich quick thing. And that kind of throws people off and makes them think that it's this scammy thing. But then when you sit here and look at all this data, right? I got literally like 20 charts of just data after data point after data point where it shows that this thing is real. There's nothing fake about it. You just gotta like educate yourself, right? Which is difficult for most people because a lot of people like to think that they know something, when in fact most of the time they don't know anything. And it's very difficult to get people to be honest with themselves about where they are. Because it's like I told you, I wanted to build a coin, but here I am finding this thing that the way I see it kind of does everything that we need a coin to do from a monetary aspect, a store of value aspect, the money aspect. And the funny thing about Hex is that I don't think that it's good to use as money. I mean, this thing is so valuable that you'd be kind of foolish to use it like money, but some people are going to use it like money, and you can't really control that.
Well, I feel like the you could use stable coins as money.
Right,
I think that's fine. But hacks and everything else out there is really store of value or a play on adoption. So,
right,
for example, if you buy Ethereum, Ethereum should, I think, flip Bitcoin easy, simply because it gives the rise to programmable currency, smart contracts out there. Pretty much everything is on Ethereum,
right,
so it totally makes sense to buy Ethereum and never sell it.
right,
The same way you look at anything else out there like Hex, like why would you sell it, right? This isn't something that should be used for as a currency. It's really more of an investment into an ecosystem
right,
that is just starting, right? Yes, it's been around for 2 years, but I feel like in this crypto winter that has started a number of months ago, the emphasis on first principles of crypto are now is now more defined, which should make Hex more attractive to the masses out there.
right.
So it's just a matter of sending the proper message, and again, it all comes down through education.
That's true.
So, like, if anybody asks me, is Hex a scam? I would say when it comes to the contract being immutable and having no keys, it's not a scam, right? There isn't a scam built in within the contract.
Right,
So that is the truth, right? It does what it does. Um, there could be an economic pressure, financial pressure from whales that got in early,
sure,
but that exists everywhere.
correct.
So
You
that in
even see it
itself
in
does,
Bitcoin.
yeah, that in itself does not make it a scam. That just makes it a standard cryptocurrency out there.
Correct.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
totally.
I mean, this is one of those things that, it's very difficult for novice people or people that are just not familiar with markets in general to understand. Like even when you look at something like Google, Amazon, well, I think Google is the the unique case here where it probably didn't have a major dip after IPO. But even Amazon had a 95% dip or two after IPO. Macy's, Berkshire Hathaway, all these stocks that you think of as home runs and all this and all that, they went through the ringer as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's such thing as a home run in anything.
Well, some people
Um,
do.
yeah, it just doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't.
And even if it did exist, right? What you can do with your money tomorrow is really not in your control.
It's all about
So,
timing, right?
I mean, it's not only about timing. I mean, think about it. We live in a society. Society can change the rules, like the
Well, it
Rona
has.
Rona situation changed the rules for many people.
Correct. I mean,
You know,
2008, up until 2008, companies went bankrupt. After that,
sure,
they kind of stopped going bankrupt. The rules
yeah,
changed.
yeah, yeah. What I'm saying is that our life can change regardless whether the crypto dumps or pumps,
Right.
and we should be aware. There's this uh, the combination of words, the saying from Stoic philosophy, "Memento mori,"
Mm,
and I think it translates that you can die at any point.
yep.
And I know it sounds a little dark, but the reality of the situation is that if you know that you're mortal and your time is limited, then you really shouldn't worry about the little things in life and focus on the bigger picture.
Yeah. It took me kind of a while to, and I won't say it's not, so, okay. So to be clear, he doesn't mean to ignore the little things, right? It's just don't give them so much weight such that you're stopping other things that could lead to progression, right?
Exactly.
Because there's no such thing as a perfect point in time. I mean, like when I found Hex, you know, I had no idea what the hell was going on, just like nobody else knew at the time. We only knew what we knew at that time. And the
Yeah.
only thing I knew was that this thing broke a paradigm that, you know, I uniquely understood at that point in time to be very important. Now, in the future, when others that are in finance, real estate, whatever have you, economics, just accounting, whatever the case is, all these different areas of the market are going to converge on Hex. They're going to have to, just because of the yield, because there are no forward returns to be had anywhere else in this market. If they're guesstimating that there are, they are lying and they're selling you something that they know you're not going to get. And that's exactly why they're selling it to you, because we are at the end of the line, economically speaking. I mean, this is exactly why Bitcoin exists, Ethereum, all these things exist precisely because of that. Now, this is also why you have these bad actors trying to find their way in, because they have no choice, right? It's exactly as you said. These guys got to find a way to get in. Otherwise, they're no longer the controllers. They're just some guys. And this is important for people to understand, because at the end of the day, it's on us to get the education out there. We're the ones that want this ecosystem to thrive, not them. So who has to get the information out there? You,
Yeah,
right?
it's just the regular people talking to regular people. I think that is the way to win and ultimately make it fair, right? Because just building something out there that controls the value on the economic level is not fair at all.
Right.
There's no fairness in it. It will be presented as if it was fair, but it isn't fair.
Correct. This is why no admin keys are important, right?
That's exactly right. And you know what? I would recommend Hex just for the fact that it has no admin keys, even if it didn't have
The
the
yield and
the
all that good
yield, the
stuff.
economics, the crazy founder. None of it would have mattered. Just for the fact that it has no admin keys is is one of the things that actually makes it worthwhile to take a look at.
Right. And that's pretty important because that's exactly what gives it. Okay, so anything could not have admin keys, right? But everything can't work flawlessly. So it's that combination of all of those little nuance factors that makes Hex Hex, right? But to Jack's point, the basic tenets of crypto are not complicated. They can be met by something as simple as a meme coin, right? And this is exactly why we study these topics to try to understand and wrap our heads around the big picture, to try to paint that civil mosaic that's going to give us that pretty picture that we want to look at, right? Because over time we want to look at that line that's showing our net worth going up and to the right. We don't really want to see anything else. But there comes a point in time where you have to understand that the game is a little bit bigger than that. And I think that we're at that point in time in history right now. And that is difficult for most people to wrap their head around because they're just looking for a trade. And those happen every day, right? I think like that kind of thing like happens every day. You're going to always find a trade.
Yeah, yeah, and that's actually what I something tweeted about as well. And I think I said something um, in regards to a bad trade or a bad an investment that's bad is when you have to check it every second or something
That's
like that,
right.
or
Yep.
every day. Something that is much better, you just buy and forget,
Hmm.
and that is a true definition of investment.
That's right.
You're
Literally.
investing into an ecosystem. You don't have to worry about a trade or time the market to
Yeah.
see if you got into too late or too early and freak out one way or the other. It never really truly uh, gives the representation of the true value if you're in and out of the system
Correct. And
that's moving around.
right. And this is difficult for people to kind of understand because they're used to, you know, ultimately the short termism, right? Everybody's used to that. And this is why, like, I have all these charts. I want to kind of wrap the stream up by going through them and trying to show you what it is I see and the value that I discovered as I was trying to analyze Hex. Because when I first found it, I literally spent 60 days just trying to understand what was going on because you would hear all these people on these streams saying all these positive things about it, but I would never see anything showing me anything, right? So I'm like, all right, well, let me just make up these charts and all that. So what I have here is just a chart showing the age of each coin respectively. First 960 days live, right, for each coin. And here we have Ethereum in orange, Bitcoin in this dull pink, T shares in this magenta hex, in this yellow. And then I have a trend line for Ethereum and T shares, both of them. Now, as you can see, Bitcoin is finally took off. Now, what you're looking at on this chart here is this is the period in time where the network was really just devs trading back and forth, right? There wasn't really any market activity, any open market activity for the first 500 something days of Bitcoin until like that pizza trade happened, and this is what this spike notifies here. And then from there, everybody discovers Bitcoin, and boom, it takes off, right? And this is where we're at as far as Bitcoin goes, 960 days into its existence. And then we have T shares, which were at 330,000 on an index basis at one point. And you also have Hex, which was probably around 200,000. I think there was like a 66%, I think is the portion of the value of Hex to a T share, typically around 65, 67%, something like that. And right now, respectively, the T share is at 51,500 and the Hex index value is at 22,200. Um, so the thing that was cool about this chart and what really shout out to people at the beginning. Here's Ethereum at 43,800. Was how Hex was outperforming Ethereum and Bitcoin really from the start. Right. Once I figured this out, I was like, oh, there's something going on here. Right. And a lot of people have no idea that Hex does it, did this. It was only the other day, 100 days ago or so, that Bitcoin and Ethereum surpassed Hex in any way, or T shares in any way. Right. This is like just happened. So out of the gate, Hex has literally crushed the competition, quote unquote, right, in terms of best form of value perceived by the market, which is determined by the performance. Now, you could also attribute liquidity factors and whatnot, but the way I view it, the cryptocurrency market is way more mature now than it was when Bitcoin came out and when Ethereum came out. So, this just speaks to the interest in this asset due to what it does, in my mind, right? This is just my perception. But now we're at a point in time where you're you know the market loves to generate max pain, and I get this question asked all the time. When does the hex chart invalidate the log base 2 theory that I have? People kind of not realizing that it's not a theory, it's just the nature of hex's returns, right? And this is something we had kind of discussed before, but not in real detail. But here's one way to view it. Here's a scale, right? That's scaled to log base 2. And as you know, the power values of 2. Give me a second. I keep going to the wrong place. Here we go. So people in the audience can see the values themselves. Where are we? Right. I like to show this all the time. Here's your N. And this is just based on Metcalfe's law, right? Because it's all about the network effect. So on the chart, we have it top out at, I think it's N equals, 14. Or I'm sorry. 3267. Hold on, because this chart, the scaling is a little different on this one. 21,092 times 10. So it stops here. N equals 15, but at a factor of 10. I haven't really noticed why it does that, but whatever. Long story short, if you look at when Hex pauses on the T-shares as well, and when it goes and all that, you'll note that all the stops and all the pauses and continuations happen around these log base 2 values, right? Like you had 128 be pretty significant, 256 also be pretty significant, 320, 16, 80, right? Like you have all these areas, 512, where they pretty much break off, or 2560 and 512, where they pretty much break off permanently, because this is when big payday happens and all this good stuff. But then as it travels through time, you still kind of see it stick to this scaling, 2048, 4096, right? And this is what I mean when I say that logarithmic base to nature. Otherwise, this protocol wouldn't take those pauses there, right? And these are kind of these nuanced details that data gives us if we're looking at the data. A lot of the time, we just glance at the data. We don't really look at it to try to study what it shows, right? And the interesting thing is this isn't the only instance in where Hex does this on a chart, because I don't know what you think, but I looked at numbers long enough to know that numbers don't just do that, right? That's Numbers don't just print a pattern unless there's something underlying that pattern. And the way I view Hex, you know, you see Ethereum kind of bounced around on these values to a certain extent, but it was a very long and drawn out. And this is what the trend line shows us, right? This power trend line, it kind of gives us a log base 10 uh, point of view versus log base 2. Now the difference here is how quickly the values are flipping, right? How quickly they're going from 2 to n to the 2 to n to the 3 to whatever you want to call it, right? However it's growing, right? And the smaller the base of the logarithm, the higher the jumps, right? Because that's really all it's measuring. How quickly is it moving up? Got them. And when you're looking at Hex, it really took off quickly and for a long period of time. Whereas these really needed some maturity, some growth, all these things to happen before they actually took off. But Hex just took off, right? Now, that's a function of maturity and all these things, and then liquidity and all these other things. But I also think that the utility and the fact that it's a closed system that's designed to work how it works, like all these things matter, right? And all these things are things that can't be overlooked when you're looking at a protocol of any kind. How does it work? Why does it work? Does it work? How is it supposed to work? Right? And when we sit here and break down Hex, this is just one chart. And this is just showing you index returns. This isn't anything fancy. This is just everything starting at 100. And how does it progress from there? Right? There's nothing fancy about this chart. So this chart is really just showing us what these asset classes are really, really doing, plain and simple, on an aged basis. And the age up to the point of this chart was made is 960 days for each asset. And that's what this chart shows. But then when we go to Hex post big payday, which now let me go back real quick. Now, what do you think about this chart when you look at just the performance, right, of Hex versus Ethereum and Bitcoin? Because it's pretty astonishing just from a very like visual perspective.
Well, yes, and it would do that. Here's the question that I would be asking,
Hmm.
and that may not be a popular question. If there wasn't uh, doubling of M2 money supply, would that happen?
Right.
So that is the question.
That's a good question. Hard to
And
say.
and it just so happened that Hex launched right before that.
Hmm.
And don't we see it in a yellow line at 97?
Yeah, it's right about here when they started printing.
Right, right. So I would say just having low liquidity and overall interest in dumping money everywhere, anything that's new and that has a heartbeat, pun, pun intended, would have
Pumped.
moved,
Yeah,
right?
and
So
the whole market did though.
yeah, yeah, the whole market did. So I would say that given the presence of the M2 money supply doubling, um, we have we have to consider the newness and the market caps of the rest of the players and how they react and their just slower momentum across the crypto space.
Right,
So anything that has literally less players will pump harder.
right. This
So
is. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I mean that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's one of those things that it's very nuanced to understand. While it's not really that nuanced, because once you get it, it's like, oh, duh, less is more. And it's very difficult for people to understand because they hear this notion of, oh, liquidity, but they don't understand that liquidity is, how do I say, like a dance, right? You gotta move with the liquidity. The liquidity needs to ebb and flow with the market. It can't be a wall, right? And in crypto, is a common misconception that liquidity has to be this wall, and it can't be, because then prices can't move,
Well, I
right?
mean, if you have a thicker order book, it's just harder for the price to move.
Right,
That's
right,
all.
right. Yeah. But when you don't know what you're doing, You could set up an order book where the price does not move. And there's examples of that in crypto. This is why I'm making that point. It's a very important point that you could mess around and buy the wrong coin and not know it because you're taking solace in the fact that these people that are talking about liquidity are telling you something that's correct when it's not.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to the simple fact. If you
Hmm.
were an investor and you were to buy Microsoft or Intel or Oracle, or you're buying the shares of a startup,
Right.
right? The risk is much higher in the startup, and so is the return.
Hmm.
So if you want even less return, you buy government bonds or muni bonds. They
Yep.
don't move at all. I mean, they barely make any money, but hey,
Your
and they
money's
have
gonna
the
you're
thickest
gonna get
order
your money
books,
back.
by the way,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they have trillions of dollars in them, the
Hmm.
bonds.
That's right. Because you're gonna get your money
So
back.
so if you want to take risk and your risk tolerance is high and you're only putting the money that you are able to lose and survive without, then you should only be investing in places like that. And at the same time, when it comes to crypto, I would say if the first principles apply, then it's a no brainer buy, right? If it's some sort of other thing that's out there that's ridiculous, then my dogs are freaking out. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
they're
about time.
probably
We'll
chasing
wrap it up
squirrels.
soon. Yeah, we'll wrap it up soon. They
Yeah,
calling.
chasing squirrels. Yeah, but anyway, so what I'm saying is that hey, if you want to buy anything, see if it follows the first principles of crypto. If it's not, you're pumping somebody else's bag. That's all.
Very simply put, and that's exactly right. And this is kind of the thing, right? You had this situation that was almost a perfect storm for Hex. You had low liquidity, money supply being doubled at minimum. We really don't know, right? But we know something happened. Um, and then you had DeFi summer happen, right? DeFi summer was this period in time where DeFi came into existence, all this capital came flowing in, yada yada, right? All these positive things happened in this short span of time for this cryptocurrency nexus. Um, and this also led to capital flowing in, right? Because people knew this space existed now, whereas before nobody really knew. Hexagons popularized, Uniswap, etc. All these things happened around the same point in time. I mean, is that a coincidence or is that serendipitous? I think that that's more serendipitous than coincidental, just because it's positive. And it's going to sound kind of, I don't know, like I'm choosing that. But if you look at history and how things typically work out, very rarely do things work out for the common man. Do very rarely do things work out in the favor of the common man. And this is why education again becomes important, because if we don't nip this one in the bud the right way, we're just gonna stay in the same place.
Well, I mean, listen, if you invest in yourself first and foremost, I mean, like, why would you need to make all this money anyway,
Yeah,
right?
you wouldn't need it.
I mean, like, listen. So if you're trading in an educated manner, and then you're bettering yourself and bettering people around you, whoever they are, your community, your family, the whole planet, then you can make the right decisions. You can make the wrong decisions. Ultimately, you navigate your life properly, and that in itself is a win. So that's kind of like I would say a meta view on the subject. So yes, I mean we're all trying to make the right investment decisions, but again, I think if we understand what we're getting into and we understand it deeply, then we tend to understand what the masses will understand later if you understand it first.
Correct.
And it's
Right.
good to be first earlier, obviously, because the rest of the market will move and will help you to get your gains if that's what you're after.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like back in the day when I joined Google, I think, and I think I told you this before. So my dad, he used to say, those who control information or access to information uh, can become very very valuable for the world and everything out there. And so when I discovered Google or learned about Google, I thought that that could be that thing. The information is key to human understanding of the world, e-commerce and commerce in general, and everything, right?
Right.
And that was one of my key decision maker, one of the key decisions that I uh, based on to 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 join the company or not. Though it wasn't necessarily too risky anyway. It wasn't like I had to turn down an offer from Microsoft. I
Right.
wouldn't work. I wouldn't work for Microsoft anyway. It was just not super interesting. I just wanted to play with some new cool stuff. But anyhow, the point is that I think ultimately, if your worldview and your philosophy is aligned with the universal principles of betterment of everyone, which I would call really the baseline of the game theory that some people would call Nash equilibrium. So in the
Yeah.
Nash equilibrium, you win when everyone wins, right?
Yep.
And so if you're launching a crypto that nobody wins in, then you can't possibly be a winner yourself. I mean, eventually, even if you do win by scamming, then they're gonna get you at some point.
Yep.
So,
By default. Hex
hey,
is one of the few coins where that's actually the case.
yeah, hey, should we take some questions from anybody out there in chat?
Yeah, let me see. If you guys got questions, throw them in the chat. I'm gonna look through right now because we're gonna wrap it up in a little bit because I'm pretty sure Jack got to go. It's been a great conversation, man. Thank you for taking all this time out today. I wish we could have gone over the charts in some refined detail, but this is, if you understand what's going on in the chain, I mean, this is probably the best chart to talk about before we wrap it up. But if you guys got any questions in the chat, let us know. I'm scrolling through. So this chart is basically the pink line. The magenta line is showing you the base monetary inflation, which is 3.69%, right? Which is what's coded into the contract. The yellow line is what's actually minted, and this is post big payday. And the reason I picked post big payday is because that was when the inflation was becoming normalized in the system, meaning that the launch phase was over and everything from that point forward was going to be status quo in terms of operating mathematically, right? So that's the point in time I picked. Man, it coincides with it just happened to coincide with the low. So the yellow line is a cumulative inflation, meaning the minted inflation over time. So we almost have 2 years of data, and we're still not at 3.69%. We're still a whole 1 percentage point away, and this was as of 6 days ago, from getting ever much closer to that APY, that annual inflation number of 3.69%. Now, this is important because this is exactly why the price of Hex is able, one of the reasons why it's able to be so lofty. You don't get a 256x move like this because people are selling the hell out of the coin, right? It's because there's a market that's been created where people understand this is something you want to hold, right? And when the minting of said asset, as we described earlier, when you were giving your theory for the optimal play, right, with crypto versus non-crypto, uh, the inflation, the promised inflation, is significantly higher than the actual inflation, to the tune of 1%. And this is why Hex is so, it's the value proposition is so significant for Hex, at least in my mind. Let's see if we got any questions. All right, no questions. Okay, let's see. This is a weird one. Did you work with a guy named Noble at Google in the early 2000s?
You know, I think I actually did. And the only reason why I remember this is because the name is just so weird.
Yeah, it is. I was like, wow,
Yeah,
noble.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. What was it, Eric? Maybe,
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't remember, but
Come with a follow up, Torin.
yeah, yeah.
What's the follow up?
I'll try to I'll look up the name in the Google in the early
Right,
Googler's database to see. But I think so. Yeah, I think I
right,
did
right.
early 2000. I was out in '05, so
Ah, okay.
yeah.
Got it. So let's see. Yeah, this is mostly due to staking. So the minted inflation is what's actually minted. So I'm taking what the system is actually saying was printed on the day and tacking that on day by day. This is why it kind of looks like the T-share rate if you think about it, right? Like it kind of steps up. It's like a step stair function, a step function. But this is to me like the biggest chart that we have. There's a lot of good charts in Hex that it's like this is what I call the value proposition chart. Over time, anytime price is under this line, which is just all the T-share payouts received to one T-share, we were at 44,700 Hex per T-share 5 days ago. Typically, when price is under this line, even though of course it's not going to be scaled perfectly, but it's typically an opportunity, a point in time to buy the coin because typically price ends up getting back above this line. It's just like if you go back to super early videos, you'll see that that's always been the case. Like price will be under it, then it'll come back up, under, up, under, up. It's just the way it works because that's the value proposition is earning the yield. That's exactly the point. So let's see, two questions. One, will Hexagon create monkey? Come on. You got to do better than that with the questions, man. Come on. We'll ask the second one. Good analysis tool for Hex is Excel. This is how I made all these charts. Have fun. We don't got an answer for number one though. Let's see. I don't know what you think, Jack, but I'll give my 2 cents on that. I honestly think that it's just people trying to be ready or nimble if the chain does get announced randomly. That's what I think, but I don't really know either.
Yeah, impossible to know.
Yeah, it's impossible to know. Yeah. Um, Here's another question for you. Personal one, Jack. Have you spent any time studying or working abroad? You're not American, but you have
Well,
that.
I finished 8 grades in Russia, so I don't know if that's constitutes as studying abroad. Afterwards, no, I didn't really work abroad. It was mostly just in the Silicon Valley. So most of my startups been here, in right around Bay Area of NorCal. So
There you go. Let's see. Any other questions? Oh, nope. But we got a bot in there. Price predictions. Eh. I think the conversation around price is so meh, and the reason I think it's like whatever is because we're again thinking in dollar terms, right? What happens if the unit of account becomes hex? Price predictions are irrelevant, and you just need to be accumulating hex because the more hex you have, the better off you'll be. But if crypto becomes the asset, right, then you just need to have crypto. But if you keep worrying about dollars, you're just gonna get left behind. And that's
yeah,
the tough thing, right? That's the tough thing about this point in time. You have to understand that. That's really the whole crux of why crypto even exists is to literally leave the dollar behind. So don't get too swayed by price predictions because we can one day wake up and hex just be $100 just because a dollar broke. It could literally happen. Like you just have to understand that. But if something like that does happen, that doesn't mean it's a good thing because then everything else went up 100 times. So it's a bad thing. right? And that's kind of the drawback of understanding this economic game that we're playing, because it's really just a numbers game. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, and here's the thing: if it's $100, who has the money to buy it,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
that's gonna be an expensive ass t-shirt.
yeah, if the money is like truly devalued at that point,
Too
then
late.
where people are getting the money, right?
Yeah.
So I would say like guns and ammo is probably would be more valuable.
Yep. Agree. I've actually done streams on that. I literally did a stream about that actually a year ago almost at this point. Yeah, guns and ammo. That's right, and food. Right,
Yeah, food and uh,
basics, literal basics.
yeah, canned tuna and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. See, this is something I could agree with about the liquidity plays. Yeah, it's just people trying to play defense against the hedge. You know, I mean against the pulse, unless against the chain launch. Uh, I don't think. I don't think at all. How will the disruption of non-diplomacy with China since a Pelosi visit affect cryptocurrency in the days ahead? I honestly don't think it's going to be much of an impact because that's what they want to happen. But that's just my two
Well,
cents.
did you know that a couple of days ago, China's official government account on Weibo said "Prepare for war."
Yeah, I actually did know that. They're doing all kinds of drills in the Taiwan Strait.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure what's going to happen. All I know is everybody should grab some popcorn.
sure. I don't even see. I mean, politics is just getting into the weeds. But what was the point of Pelosi getting into Taiwan today?
Stirring the just stirring the pot.
You know what
That's
I
my
think it is?
personal
It's
opinion.
it's all it's all the stock trades that they're doing. They just want to distract the people by saying, "Oh, look, I'm in Taiwan."
Yeah, I just think it's stirring the pot. I don't think there's anything value add or detract from it except to create headlines and cause tension. Because that what happened right before that is just like you said. She took that little loss in that Nvidia trade, and all is well. Off to Taiwan she goes to face the enemy of China.
Right.
the all courageous Miss Pelosi. Get the fuck out of
Well, you should see. I don't know if you ever follow the Michael Burry, the
here. Yep.
big short guy.
Yep.
So he actually tweeted. He tweeted about it. He's like, all that putting the world in danger just to cover up and sway attention away from
What you
your
did.
dealings within the government and having access to information that other people don't have.
Correct.
Like the new chip law that they have passed supposedly
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
benefiting the chip companies. I mean, I know the law probably means well. The thing is,
Never
a
works out
lot of
that
those people who are making the law are also buying Nvidia and Qualcomm and all the chip companies.
way. Mm-hmm.
So
They're taking advantage of their
how is that
position.
not illegal, right? You pass the
Yeah.
law and you pump your price or
They're taking
pump your bag, like
yeah,
literally,
they're literally taking advantage of their position, and that's the complete opposite of what they're
right?
supposed to be doing.
And then like, oh look, we're in Taiwan now,
Yep.
and let's not look at our stock trades. Let's look at China.
Let's look at what's going on everywhere but here.
Yeah.
Everywhere but here. Let's see. You got another question here. If you're building anything on Pulse Chain, and you're welcome, Bobo.
So I feel like I am in an early stage of building something that's Ethereum compatible, which by de facto going to be on Pulse chain.
Hmm. Interesting.
And you probably saw my tweets. I posted some
Mhm.
assembly code that I've been using. Actually, check out that tweet. It's your favorite function, log 2.
I know. I did see it.
It's written in assembly. You should like
Yeah.
bring it up and show it to people.
Let's
It
see if I
it
can find it.
it makes the gas usage for the math function minimal because it's literally using the EVMs straight, so it doesn't have any abstraction.
Gotcha. It's not going through any tunnels, any pathways. It's going straight to the source.
Yeah, yeah.
See.
So, and I feel like when coding in Ethereum in Solidity, I think the business logic should be in the regular Solidity, but then when it comes to uh, logarithmic math functions or anything to do with math, you should really try to do it in assembly, just because it's all the same code, but you spend half the gas or even like
Damn.
third of gas. So that's it. See how it says log 2?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a snippet of code in assembly, inline assembly in Solidity. So that's like part of the thing that I'm playing with right now.
There you go, folks. There's the answer to your question.
Pulse chain compatible.
Boom. So there you go. That's freaking crazy.
Yeah.
The things you learn.
Yeah. Speaking of synchronicity, right? Remember how we talked about how we're in a matrix?
Yeah.
So I posted this, and then I get the message from you, and I'm like, who is this Wales guy? Let's see his website. And then I open your website, and the first thing I see is the log function. I'm like, what?
What are the odds of that?
I'm telling you, it's the same as the Sam Bankman Fried.
Oh man, yeah. Come
Same
on.
thing. Same thing.
That was that was just too
I
funny.
I literally thought that you saw my code, and that's what and
Nope.
you kind of like put the two and two together, and now that I know that you like log too, that's why you invited me to the stream.
Yep.
Was that the case or not? It was just like completely
Close
random.
enough. I mean, I intended to talk to you anyway, but you
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
nice bone.
All right. All
All
right.
right.
Well, there
Because
we
I
go.
mean, this is the whole thing. I mean, is right here.
Yep.
People don't understand, right? Like you can code it up. You can write the money however you want it to operate. Programmable money. This is software. When I go about teaching people, about the tenets of crypto, I'm like, first thing is first. Understand that this is software.
Oh, hey, I see a question that I really want to answer. It's about
Ah,
the apple cider vinegar.
uh-oh. Hold on. I forget you're the apple cider maestro. Hold on. What's that question, man?
No, listen, there's a reason why I want to answer it, because I think some people in the community they're like in some sort of self-imposed personal challenge where they're drinking it straight up or something.
Oh boy.
So I want to make sure it doesn't happen. So what are they
Yeah.
saying? What is the formula daily for cayenne pepper?
And apple cider vinegar, you suggest.
Okay, so first of all, it shouldn't be daily, because your body will. So the body is amazing. Human body will adapt to any sort of intake or any changes that you're making to the body. And so when you're doing something daily, it loses its effectiveness,
Hmm.
because apple cider vinegar and cayenne pepper act as stressors for the body. So it triggers a gene expression that literally creates this sort of an effect on autophagy. And autophagy is a cell metabolism where the old cells are destroyed and amino acids are extracted. So you kind of rejuvenate when you do that. So my recommendation, first and foremost, is no more than twice or three times a week with for the apple cider vinegar and cayenne pepper. Now, when it comes to the dose, and we all know the saying dose makes the poison. We want to make sure it's no more than a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar on a glass of water. And the
Hmm.
cayenne pepper, you can just add it for as much as you can handle. I mean, like, don't eat it straight up, obviously. I mean, it's going to be tough. But I like to I like to use the glass that's transparent, and when I stir it, I see the flakes kind of like floating around,
Right.
but it's not like completely red or anything. So it just gives it an extra kick. So
Well, there you go. I learned something new. I hear people talk about the apple cider stuff all the time, and I don't know enough. I don't. For as healthy as I try to be, that's one thing I just don't know anything about. But now that you speak on it, I'm like, okay, I understand. Now I understand. Now I understand.
Yeah, I mean, like you don't want to overdo it. I mean,
Right, right, right,
if you if you take it consistently, your body's gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm used to it, so
right,
it will resist,
right,
right? It's like why antibiotics don't work when you take it for months.
right. Correct. You gotta let it. You gotta act. It's one of those things people don't get. You gotta let things work. Uh, okay. The dollar has already lost its value. That's why inflation is like people. If you look at the cost of living, it should be clear that the dollar is already done. The cost of living does not just shoot up a quarter of a dollar because a currency is okay. The dollar is already done. It's just a matter of when are we going to wake up and it literally be Weimar. That's where we're at.
Well, the biggest challenge is Europe. So Europe and China. So in China, they have the mortgage market getting imploded again. I think we talked about it too. And
Yeah.
Europe, Europe having a problem because it's a bunch of countries together under the same currencies. They can't agree on what the policy should be.
Yep. Biggest issue.
So I mean, at least in the United States, we're kind of like all Americans, but they're like,
Everybody.
okay, should Germany bail out Greece again? That sort of
Right.
question all over again. So that
And those are
makes their
contentious points. It's not like it's something anybody really wants to talk about.
yeah, that makes their policies, their economic policies, are somewhat ineffective.
Correct.
And unfortunately, it's such a large market. I mean, we have the biggest market of all, but both China and Europe may have what they would call a contagion effect
Right.
on all equities out there. So I think when it comes to market, I don't think like I read it in the news that people are saying, "Oh, look, we're starting a new bull market." I think you gotta be kidding me, right? I mean, the Fed is raising rates, the whole world is raising rates, and you're thinking we're in the next bull market? Like, why? But hey, that's how people make money, right? I mean,
Yeah.
markets are inefficient, so
By design. That's why the flow of information is so critical. Like you have to understand. Now, I remember when I was trying to understand what drove prices, up and down, right? And that's one of those things that's, a lot of the times it's just verbiage. It's not anything else. And it took me a while to realize that. And this is why I talk about interest rates and stuff all the time, because what these central banks do is that they talk the market where they want it to go. They don't actually ever do anything, right? And this is important to understand because this is how they trick people into thinking certain things, but yet we feel the impact of those tricks. Those tricks are not without any impact, right? This is why our cost of living is so much higher. This is why everything hurts more monetarily speaking. It's not because the dollar is gaining value. I mean, the supply side destruction in conjunction with the monetary destruction, um, you know, uh, it's just bad altogether. It's just bad.
I need
I
to
don't even
unmute
remember
myself.
them. Oh,
I
you
think
my bad.
I was saying something smart, and so that was it's like the same story with the unplugged microphone. I mean, this time I unmuted.
Yeah, I don't even remember those log function images. So I'm gonna have to go looking. Let's see. Is that you're gonna build 2. Pulse chain 2.0 and 1.0 ain't even out yet.
Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah. So I think my thing is that I just want people to be treated fairly in
Right.
blockchain. I don't want those like machine skis, breed and multiply and take advantage of people.
For sure.
So that's like my thing. So whatever I'm gonna build, it's gonna be under the first principles of crypto for sure. And that's why I called it Fair Crypto Foundation. So I want something that gets into the education of things, teaches people how to trade something or get into something safely, and really just follow uh, the benefits through a network effect, which
Right.
means that everybody get to win through knowledge, education, and just the betterment of the community.
Yeah, it's pretty serious when you put it like that, right? Because it takes me back to exactly what this gentleman was talking about in the first comment when we were in Vegas. Um, it was so seminal for me personally because I had never been a part of a community where being yourself was kind of okay, right? Typically, you got people trying to play this role and all this stuff, and that's just not what we're doing over here. So shout out to you, brother, because of course, I remember. Um, Hex price by Christmas, I got no idea, but definitely higher than where we are right now. Pretty confident of that, just because it's already going to be long enough by that point in time. If not, then shit. Not sure what to tell you. We all gonna be hurting anyway, so it ain't gonna matter. What do you think, Jack?
I think we're not at the end of the bear market. I think if you want to, like, let's say that you want to buy anything that's an equity or crypto or anything, I would say wait for Federal Reserve to start easing rates. Like, wait for that inflection point. Then we're likely going to be at the bottom.
And it's
So
coming.
until then, we're going to be trading likely in range, which means no more than 20% up or down.
Hmm.
So I would say just wait for all of those economic things play out. Like, what we'll see what happens in China and Europe, and we'll see what the Fed will do in September. And I'm pretty sure I looked at the Federal Reserve rates futures, and it looks like there's an 80% chance they're going to raise another 75% or 75 basis points. It could be actually 100 basis points. I mean, I wish they ripped the band-aid off harder and quicker, so that the whole thing could crash, and then we could establish a new baseline.
All right. Don't doesn't everybody? That's what I wish they would have did 14 years ago, but they didn't do that.
Well, they're not gonna do it now until the elections, and the elections are what, like October or November.
Yep.
So it's gonna be dilly dally and dancing around the issue until this whole thing plays out. So unfortunately, everybody will end up paying with their economic energy
Yep.
for the next couple of years, just because they cannot make a decision. So,
Right.
and you would
Right.
think they have their hands on the pulse of the economy.
Yeah, you would
So
think, but they don't.
no,
And
no, they don't.
for those of you that are curious, I already said we were at the bottom like a long time ago, and just like Jack said, I said we were just gonna trade in range ever since because it's nowhere for the price to go. Still got a ton of sellers selling. You just saw a 10 million hex sale yesterday, and you're still seeing these big sales like that with people that just don't know how to sell or are opting to not sell in a strategic fashion. So you're going to continue to see these wild gyrations in price at these low cent levels. These are to be taken advantage of. These are to be points of accumulation because again, after 95% USD value to not, reduction, what do you expect? Right? You have to be smart about these things and understand how waves move. Waves don't invert, and if they do, well, then you got a bigger issue.
Yeah,
So that's how I look at that. So,
cool.
but yeah, man, I think that wraps it, bro. I don't see any more questions in here. I'd just like to say, thank you for coming on and blessing us with so much time. I didn't think we'd be on for this long, so thank you so much, and
Yeah,
salute to
yeah,
your
very,
dogs for
very,
being
very
troopers.
good conversation. I feel like we can talk, finance
Yeah,
and philosophy forever. So we should do it again.
For sure, man, for sure. Because we definitely didn't touch on everything. We skipped a bunch of stuff. It's
Yeah,
a lot of good stuff to talk about.
the next stream should be about the Matrix.
Yeah, it should be because there's how does everything line up so well, so neatly in mathematically speaking, right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost too nice, but we'll talk about that next time. Thank you guys for tuning in, and Jack, again, thank you, man, for gracing us with your presence, and shout out to everybody in the chat. If there's anything you'd like to leave the crowd with, where to find you and all that good stuff, please go ahead, and I'll shut up.
Awesome. Thanks, Wales. Thanks for having me online.
My pleasure, man. Guys, thank you for joining us. We're gonna bang that outro. And everybody have a fantastic Sunday night. Spread this one. Let the homies know. We got a lot going on over here. Peace. Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. Shit, motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Like this.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. I mean, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Y'all deep. Everybody. My God. Ex-Asians, bro. Everybody. Australians, man. Everybody gets it.